Is it picking it up? No. That's crazy. Testing, testing. Testing, testing. Is it? Okay.
Testing, 1, 2. Testing.
Hi, Pat. I'm here early.
I'm gonna text that to Mario and have what we had last night. But I didn't have numbers, but it was a lot more than what, you know what, I'm actually. After the board.
After the board meeting, I have an email that I've started. I
If-
just haven't
if you-
finished putting it together.
Yeah,
Do you want me to, I was gonna
Yes.
send it to Alexis.
The board meeting.
Hey, Pat, several of us are here if you want to do a sound check.
So I can see if the camera picks you up.
Hello, test. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Test, hello.
Hi, how are you, Pat? Can you see us? We're ready to do a sound check whenever you are, Pat.
Good morning, Polly. Good morning, gentlemen. Could you, each one of you test your microphones, please, so that we can make sure that we can hear you?
Well, I'll begin. Polly Hanson, Senior Director, Security Risk. and
Polly, I can't hear
Emergency-
you.
You cannot hear me?
It doesn't work.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Polly.
Can you
We
hear-
can't hear you. Hold on 1 second.
Okay. That's why you do a sound check, right? You guys look very handsome and everybody knows what they're covering and what we're doing. So this is good. And Brian's on his vacay. So as soon as he's done, he probably has shorts on.
Don't stand
Yes.
up, Brian, don't stand up. Don't stand up.
Yeah,
I don't even think that.
no, he has shorts on because he's on vacay.
Not that kind of vacation, Eric.
Okay,
I was thinking,
so
no, I was
I
thinking
can,
boxers.
I can hear, Polly, can you test your microphone again, please?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, that's good. And then,
Okay.
everyone else want to just say hi or something real quick?
Yep, why don't we do Brian Alberts next?
Okay,
Good morning, Brian Alberts, APTA.
great, okay.
Al Styler, San Diego MTS.
Okay, Al, if you could, is there a way for your microphone to turn up louder?
You're a
Uh,
little low, Mike. I mean, Al, your
uh,
mic was low. Can you get closer?
I can try. Is this any better?
Yeah,
Yes,
that's better.
That's good.
Okay.
Hey, everybody, Eric Muntan, Chief of Safety and Security at Miami.
Hey, you also need to speak a little bit louder.
Okay, let me actually. Oh,
Computer closer.
I go to meetings.
That's a little bit loud. That's a little bit better, but if you, maybe one more,
Okay, is that better?
yes, that's a little bit better. We'll just have to have you talk directly into your microphones so that we can hear you and that our WebEx recording can also pick you up. Thank you. We'll get started in just a couple minutes.
Okay. And then panelists, I think if you're not talking, then we don't need to be on camera, right?
I thought that, yeah.
Polly, just to confirm, so
I mean,
right
it-
before one of our slides, we should just come back on camera and unmute.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably easier if you all just stay on camera.
Okay.
Because we're controlling the slides from here, so there shouldn't be any issues with your bandwidth or anything.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. Hopefully everyone can hear me in the room. Just an important safety reminder. In the unlikely event of an emergency, the evacuations to the stairwells or to the right or to the left outside the exit doors, to the stairwells down, the meeting location is at the Orpheum Theater, where we be briefed on the next steps. There is also fire extinguishers in the back of the room, in front of me here and on the other corner, as well as an AED machine located in the break room right out this door and to the left. Can I get folks who are AED CPR certified to raise their hand in the room? Yes, can I get at least 2 people, a primary and an alternate, to dial 911 in the unlikely event of an emergency? I got it. Thank you. That concludes the safety message.
Chair Pastor, we can begin whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, or, yeah, well, good morning, good afternoon. I'm going to convene the study session and welcome members. If a board member would like to ask a question or make a comment during the study session, please raise your hand if you are joining via WebEx. All meeting attendees, please mute your computer, microphone, or phone. Jessica, could you please provide an overview?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. Welcome, members of the committees. Today, we're going to conduct a study session that is focused on transit security. We have a number of different components. We recently worked with the American Public Transit Association to conduct a safety and security peer review. So we'll hear about that. Next slide, please, Stephanie. Just as a matter of table setting, safety and security, that of our customers, our team members, and our neighbors is our highest priority. Without safety and security, little else matters. In the conversation today, with the exception of the safety and security peer review, we're going to focus explicitly on security. And security means intentional harm. So that is a risk typically imposed by other people, whereas safety is unintentional harm. Think of that as collisions, accidents, slips, trips, and falls. We've always been focused on security, but the environment around us here in Phoenix and Valley Metro and nationwide has changed in the last few years. We have to make changes along with that. Likewise, our system is also growing and evolving. So the evolution of all of our operating programs is continuous. The same, of course, is true of our security program. We're not going to take action today. We want to provide the board with information and create the opportunity for you to provide staff with guidance on our future direction. Before we can do that, though, I think we need to do a little bit of overview of what that program looks like today. Next slide, please. We'll first hear from that APTA Safety and Security Peer Review team. I'll allow them to introduce themselves. They'll be up in just a moment. Adrian Reese, our Director of Safety and Security and Quality Assurance, is going to provide an overview of our existing programs. Hillary Foose, our Director of Communications and Strategic Initiatives, will share results of a recent writer survey that was conducted in late 2022 and early 2023, focused on a number of issues, but we deliberately put additional content questions in that survey focused on writer security. And then finally, we'll have a shared discussion about where we should be going from here. Now I'd like to invite Polly Hansen of the American Public Transit Association to work with the team to deliver the peer review, observation, and recommendations. I want to note that the peer review report is included in your packet in addition to this presentation. Welcome, Polly.
Good day. Good day, Chair Pastor, Valley Metro Board Committee members, CEO Mefford Miller. My name is Polly Hansen, and I'm the Senior Director of Security Risk and Emergency Management with the American Public Transportation Association. I was here sometime before you talking about a operations and maintenance survey we had done, or peer review. And just to remind you, APTA is the oldest and largest advocacy group for mass transit and passenger rail. We do advocacy, and that is having conversations with congressional representatives on behalf of our thousands of members. We develop standards and we do peer reviews. And so without further ado, I'm going to kick off going to the next slide about the peer review. And I would ask my colleagues to come up on the screen as well. So we do have an agenda. It's very brief. We really want to get to the meat of what we're here to discuss. But this is really what we're going to go over. And I would say next slide, please. These are our panel members. Rebecca is missing today. She was on vacay and was not going to come. Brian Alberts is abroad and, felt so compassionate and passionate about what we're going to talk about here, which is public safety, something that's really important to him as our Senior Director of Public Safety and Advocacy Services. So he's here today as well. Eric and Al will introduce themselves when it's time for them to speak. Next slide, please. And this is, of course, myself and Brian. Next slide, please. So this is the peer review methodology. As I indicated, something APTA's done for a really long time. It's very well known in our industry. We did one before for you, and we bring very experienced, respected transit professionals to look at a topic or an issue or a concern that a CEO has identified. We were in Phoenix late February, early March, and we were there in person, and we conducted interviews, did site visits, looked at documentation, and other analysis, either while we were there or before or after. It was convened at the request of Valley Metro to look at the safety and security functions and how to have a better, stronger public safety program to meet the challenges and risks and to ensure that your employees and customers are properly protected and cared for. These were our objectives to look at your safety, security, and quality assurance program, which Adrian leads, to see how the division is meeting requirements, to look at your policies and procedures, look at the collaboration, and that's some of the important pieces that we're going to hit here is collaboration with your local law enforcement partners and your contractors and contracted personnel. Next slide, please. And then once again, what we base our recommendations on are truly best practices and things that we know to be opportunities to look for a response to these emerging challenges, such as the unhoused, substance abuse, and other issues such as the mentally health. And now I'm going to turn it over to Brian Alberts.
Thanks, Polly. As Polly mentioned, I'm our Senior Director of Safety and Advisory Services at APTA. So I work closely with Polly. She does all our security, risk management, and those things, and I work on safety overall. So I'm here to kind of lay the groundwork and talk to you about some of the general observations and recommendations that we saw while we were on site with the panel. Next slide, please. So the first thing that we observed was SSQA, or Safety and Security Quality Assurance Division, seems to have a very positive and transparent relationship with your SSOA, Arizona DOT. So I know working closely with all of the rail transit agencies in the country, that's not actually the case. And so that's something to be commended for. And we think that those folks at ADOT seem to have a really good, strong industry knowledge of Valley Metro's operations. Also, we found that during recent audits, there were some deficiencies found in bus operator training and the administration of the drug and alcohol policy, which I know that Valley Metro is working on now or trying to solve. SSQA is now being included earlier in the design process. So that was one of the recommendations we had, is that SSQA actually be brought in early on in the process at the 50% stage to identify potential safety critical items before proceeding through the rest of the engineering phases. So we found this as a good practice. And we know that Valley Metro has a lot of capital projects in the hopper and going through right now. So we think that it's really good to get safety on board, safety and security on board earlier on in the process. Finally, we commend the creation of the bus security position that was created under Adrian's group, and the development of the Valley Metro bus blotter, which we thought was a really great practice as well. Some other observations that we found: maintenance of way and operations and maintenance center had safety walls. So those are those walls that are up in the maintenance areas with the safety vests and the glasses and all that. We thought that was great. The MOW operations and maintenance center were also well lit, clean, and had adequate signage. And I've done a lot of safety audits in my position, and that's not always the case as well. So we want to commend you all for that. Also, Valley Metro's team is focused on providing quality transportation throughout the entire Maricopa County region, connecting communities and enhancing lives. We also thought you had just hosted the Super Bowl before we got there in late February, and we found that really commendable that you had actually hosted it for a second time, because many cities are asked to do it once, but never again after that. So we thought that was really great. And it really shows how much Valley Metro staff is dedicated to providing great quality transportation throughout your region. Also, Valley Metro is on schedule to open your Northwest Extension Phase 2 in 2024. So we know that's on the mind of many folks in the room here today as well. Also, the member cities articulated that Valley Metro has retained a CEO, Jessica, with extensive transit experience and a strong commitment to the customer experience. And then finally, we found that the new goals of the agency are aligned with the CEO's vision for the agency and will guide the strategic plan moving forward for Valley Metro. A couple of the general recommendations, are Valley Metro should continue to conduct timely audits of all your safety critical testing and training. So just continue to do internal audits of anything that has a safety critical component. Also, that I know you already continue to do this, but we really commend you and want you to continue to bring SSQA department in during your design phase for capital projects, as that's really important for safety certification for some of these larger capital projects. And with that, I'm going to hand it over now to Eric, the head of safety and security at Miami-Dade Transit. Eric?
Thank you, Brian. Good morning, board members and Director Mefford Miller, and all of my fellow colleagues and partners that now I think of partners down at Valley Metro, because I've been in contact with many of you after this. First off, I'd like to thank the director and also Adrian for being a tremendous host when we were down there. Your people were amazing. You have a fantastic program, and we think that you guys are doing a great job. Real quickly, just want to go over the SSQA organizational structure. A couple bullet points that we brought out were: in light of future expansions and growth, Valley Metro SSQA appears to be understaffed and under-resourced as of right now. And also, we saw that the SSQA director has been performing the duties of an emergency manager. So on these two bullet points, the recommendations were that the panel recommends the Valley Metro conduct benchmarking with agencies of similar size and operation to determine appropriate staffing levels. I have to tell you, my 30 years of doing this, once you get into those major projects and a very aggressive expansion that you're looking at, the FTA is going to come in and look at your organization and make sure that you're not lean. You're able to do your every day-to-day operations and also do the expansion. So that's really important to have the right amount of personnel doing the appropriate activities. And also, SSA should consider increasing the quality assurance and field safety staff so you can get out there, as well as establishing a dedicated emergency manager position. Because as you expand, you're going to need that emergency manager position dedicated to reaching out to those places, those LEOs, those law enforcement oversight agencies that are out there to maintain your activities and not be spread so lean. Next slide, please. Also, the current safety and security policies, practices, procedures, tools, and recommendations. Our observations were that the employee safety reporting of Valley Metro includes a peer recognition function, which we found to be a leading practice. Peers are recognizing peers as doing safe, good things out in the field. Leadership has approved the data management solution, which is also a good practice, because as we go forward with this new PTAS and the infrastructure bill, there's going to be more data that is needed by the FTA. So that's a good practice of collecting that and getting a powerful tool on board, so that'll make it easier for your people. The roadway worker protection may not be implemented in a standardized manner. And also during our interviews, and we were out there a lot, it wasn't clear that there's a universal understanding of de-escalation. Next slide. Also, we observed the First Transit's training program doesn't include interim quizzes to assess the bus operator's aptitude and knowledge retention. So our recommendations, I think we need to go back at Valley Metro and look at the RWP program and the need for additional flaggers, because you have a light street running rail cars, and a lot of people are in and around your property, So we need to make sure that all those areas are protected from your train movement and that no other people are getting into your right of way. And those RWP practices need to hold constant throughout your whole system. Also, de-escalation best practices need to be aligned throughout the organization. And looking at today's society, we need to make sure that our train operators and our bus operators are armed with those verbal skills to interact with everyday passengers to de-escalate those potential problem incidents before they occur. Also, the procedure for requesting police assistance should be evaluated for efficacy. We want that free-flowing information, but we need it to come into a central location so everything is uniform when it's put out into the field. And that way, your police department or any law enforcement personnel are going out to an accident or an incident from a single location, a single call. Next slide, please. And I'll turn it over to my colleague, Al.
Al, we think you're on mute.
I got you. I got it. Good morning. My name is Al Styler. I'm the Director of Transit Security and Passenger Safety here at San Diego MTS. I want to echo Eric's comments. It was a real pleasure to meet the staff at Valley Metro and their contract partners. It was clear that they had a desire to provide a pleasant riding experience for your customers. And that was evident throughout every conversation I had the whole time I was there. I focused mostly on the collaborative efforts between contract personnel and law enforcement on your system. So next slide, please. First of all, some of our observations. We saw that the Allied Universal Security Supervisor rate to officer was about 1 to 15. We learned that customer service complaints are investigated by the contractor versus an independent group. And we also learned that your fare collection system is being upgraded, and that may affect some of your fare box recovery. Next, please. As I said earlier, the relationship between Allied Universal and Valley Metro was very strong. And that was evident in that they often meet together. You know, Allied staff go to Valley Metro job fairs. Valley Metro managers participate in Allied Universal meetings. So there's a great sense of communication between both teams. And that's so important that everyone has the same mission and the same focus regarding your ridership. Next slide, please. We saw that City of Phoenix PD, they'll patrol bus stops and shelters, but not a lot of enforcement on your station platforms and on board your trains. And I'll discuss a little bit more about that in a second. But I'm here in San Diego and I'm dealing with the same issue. You know, getting law enforcement to understand the needs and the priorities of the transit system can be difficult at times. And again, I'll discuss that more later. I think that Valley Metro needs to review best practices to increase supervision along with their frontline officers. 15 to 1 is just too big of a gap to make sure that the officers are getting the support that they need while out in the field doing such a difficult job. And Valley Metro should reevaluate how their customer service complaints are handled. Right now, they are handled internally by the contractor, and I think there just needs to be some oversight to ensure that complaints are handled thoroughly and resolved properly. Again, back to the law enforcement issues. I really think Valley Metro, first of all, needs to develop some kind of memorandum of understanding, agreements, contract with local law enforcement to ensure that your security staff is being supported the way they need to be. My agency and my department is very similar to Valley Metro in that I don't have a law enforcement component. I have some code compliance inspectors that can issue citations for minor violations on our system, and they're augmented by our contract security team. But they're facing a difficult challenge in light of today's environment. I'm sure everybody's aware, and I just attended an APTA conference roundtable, and the anti-social behavior, increase in violence across transit system across our nation has skyrocketed. And we're asking security officers to do a very difficult job. and they need to have some type of law enforcement support to identify problem people and to make sure that when they're assaulted or an issue happens, that they get a rapid police response. Next
And I
slide,
think one of
please.
the things, Al, you mentioned the roundtable, and I think what we found at the roundtable is, people do have layered public safety programs with contracted security, maybe ambassadors, their own employees, like your own employees went out for the Super Bowl. But there are times when only a person with a badge and a gun and handcuffs can support your employees. And that's really, really relevant when there are assaults both on employees, which is getting far more attention now from the Federal Transit Administration, and having that visible deterrent, particularly in light of some of the issues we mentioned, which is the unhoused and the mental health. Certainly having a public a clinician, which FTA money does allow you to get, mental health clinician or crisis interventionist is helpful. But once again, many times those folks want to be supported by law enforcement. So having a coordinated program where local law enforcement in the member cities and Phoenix that do have light rail is really important. And if it's just a step on, step off, as you're doing something else, going in to get something to eat or being at the bus stop, just going ahead and getting on the light rail platform momentarily while it trains there is extremely helpful. And Al would attest to that, as would Eric, who both either contract with or work or try to work closely with local law enforcement.
Thank you, Chief. And that's a great segue into the next topic that I'll be discussing, which is the emerging challenges that are facing transportation agencies. And I can assure you, we have the same issues out here in San Diego. The people that are experiencing homelessness, the mental health crisis, and the rise in drug use has severely impacted our ability to provide a good environment for our customers. We all ourselves here at San Diego MTS, we did a customer survey, and then we dug deeper with some focus groups. And the same repeating comments, the same trend was that passengers are not feeling safe on our system, mostly due to the behavior of other passengers on board. And that could be somebody that's experiencing some type of mental health issue, somebody that is suffering from homelessness and has a lot of their belongings that they're bringing on board a train, or loitering at our transit station. It just leads to a perception that the system's not as safe as it can be or actually is. Next slide, please. So with that, and this is very difficult for transportation agencies, and it's one of the struggles I've had here, is trying to partner with agencies that can provide the services that these unhoused and people that are experiencing mental health issues need. When I first got here to San Diego MTS about 2.5 years ago, I was able to partner with 1 or 2 agencies that are willing to cross geographical borders to assist people in need. But so many of the programs are funded and they have boundaries where they can't cross, but our system crosses all of these boundaries, and that becomes the challenge. So with that, our recommendation is that Valley Metro tried to get some liaison with social services members in the different cities and have some kind of coordinated effort that help to address these impacts of the unhoused and mentally ill, so that you can provide that environment. Also, some of the other just emergency challenges was, the cybersecurity risks that agencies are having, and working with your IT and OT staff to make sure that we're designed to prevent that. And I know there were some funding issues that I know that the Valley Metro has to find a dedicated funding source. But thank you for that.
And now Brian Albert's going to continue, and then we're going to end up and want to open it up to questions.
I realize I'm on mute. Thanks, Polly. Yeah, I just have a couple of last observations and recommendations that are more safety-based. So one of the things we found during our interviews is that no ridership study has been conducted since pre-COVID-19. So since the COVID-19 pandemic in March of 2020, it didn't seem like in 2020 or after there's been a ridership study conducted at Valley Metro. Similarly, the planning and scheduling has not conducted any runtime studies for each route in a pretty significant amount of time, at least a few years. So one of the things that we found from that is that the current design of the schedules could potentially lead to increased accident rates due to distracted driving if scheduled running time is not sufficient. Also, sometimes if rider, and this is just something we've talked about in safety many times, but if people don't have the proper amount of time to actually conduct their routes, to use the bathroom quickly at the end of their routes, then that can also lead to operators sometimes going too quickly on their routes, and in the end, actually creating some safety concerns. So our two recommendations are that Valley Metro should conduct a ridership study. This will help the agency in understanding traffic and riding patterns currently on the system post-COVID-19, because we know the ridership throughout the entire country, including Valley Metro, has changed since the pandemic. And then also Valley Metro should conduct, where's the last one? Should conduct runtime studies on the system and evaluate the schedule. So that's the end of our observation and recommendations. We want to thank everyone and see if people have questions.
Well, and I think in conclusion, what we want to highlight is that Adrienne needs to have the resources she needs to deal with expansion, to ensure that things are being done safely, that design and quality assurance is there. As Eric referenced, the FTA will, want data. They're asking for more data. They want more strategies for reducing assaults on transit workers, and that comes from having a comprehensive and collaborative program of all public safety personnel, and that does include local law enforcement. So I think if folks don't take anything else away, there is an understanding that Valley Metro can't do this in isolation. I spent over 30 years in transit policing. I came up through the system in Washington, D.C., where I was their chief, and I was the chief of the Amtrak police. We had dedicated armed law enforcement for both of those transit systems. Al came from both New York MTA Police Department and spent, decades with the New Jersey Transit Police, a statewide agency. In the absence of that, you have someone like Eric in Miami that contracts with Miami-Dade, and they have a unit that's responsible, but the whole department recognizes the prosperity of the city, the attractiveness to tourists, the ability to attract something like the Super Bowl is something that benefits the region, and coming from having a strong relationship between the transit authority and first responders, both fire and police, and understanding that every city is challenged with lack of resources. Our transit agencies are challenged with the lack of resources, but that's why it's even more important to collaborate, to meet regularly, to share data, and to have the vision of being dedicated to having a safe and secure transit system that serves both the employees and the region. And with that, I would turn it back over to the CEO or the chair, and defer to how you want to handle the ability for members to ask questions.
Thank you. If I may, Madam Chair. It might be most effective for us to have Q&A and discussion at the end. We might proactively be addressing some of the questions you may have as we walk through our current operation and what's happening. So before we review our current security program, I want to thank Polly, Brian, Eric, Al, and Rebecca, who couldn't join us today for the peer review. This is a wonderful opportunity for us. It's incredibly cost effective for the organization as well, by the way, for us to do a deep dive and look at our operation and compare ourselves to how our peers are doing this. We're not the only transit agency out there, and the challenges we're experiencing are the very same challenges that our peers are experiencing. In addition to the recommendations reviewed in this presentation and in the report that you have, we now have relationships with these peers, and we've been interacting on a regular basis, seeking out guidance and information from them. Adrienne and team are conducting a number of virtual peer listening sessions focusing on specific questions related to our peer safety and security programs, and that experience has been invaluable. We have been working even since before the recommendations report was received to address many of the recommendations. We've conducted a number of audits proactively of our safety and security functions and that of our contractors over the past year. we're on the path to progress. We've got a lot of work to do, but good things certainly are happening within the organization. Now, I'd like to ask Adrian Rees to review our existing transit security program. Please, Adrian.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm going to actually be operating the slides. Here you go. I'd like to first talk about, I just have a few slides before I turn it over to Hillary. The bus and rail system, speaking specifically to security, we have layers addressed in both assets and both modes. First of all, for the bus side, to see something, say something. We do have ample signage and a campaign to market to our ridership. If they see something that's of concern, they definitely can speak up, notify the operator, any Valley Metro employee or contractor, as well as calling 911 as well. For the rail security and city coordination, for bus security coordination, we have the bus security coordinator now in position, and I have a slide dedicated just to his actions that he's taken in the last year that he's been here. It's Dave Munley, who's actually present in the room. So for that layer itself has been definitely leaps and bounds, has improved our work with law enforcement, definitely. When we also talk about layers, it starts also with the operator. So the operator on the bus system, unique from light rail, just a greeting. Working with our contractors, we emphasize just how important it is to say hello and greet folks. It shows that someone is home. That's the front door for our ridership, just like a platform for light rail and a bus stop. But the bus itself, as soon as folks board a bus, there should be a greeting involved with that. So that offers a layer of security as well. When looking at law enforcement, for the bus side specifically, in most of the cities we operate, there is not a dedicated transit unit, unlike Phoenix, who does have a dedicated transit unit. So most of the time, that is a reactive response. So when 911 is called or crime stop, police report and respond to that. So with having Dave Munley in the bus security coordinator position, which I'll get into more detail, that has definitely improved, as I'll get to in a minute. So for the bus side with City of Phoenix, they do have a transit unit, and we work with Phoenix PD in that unit for the bus. For the rail, some more layers there that are a little bit unique. The operator being obviously in the cockpit or the cab does not have that initial response with the ridership. But we do have obviously CECs as well as a layer. That greeting with our CECs, our customer experience coordinators, by merely just being present, making eye contact, greeting folks as they board. Allied security, having a security contract with a provider that primarily focuses on fair inspection and enforcement, but also a customer service focus. So we've emphasized, especially coming out of COVID, which we were very much hands off, keep your distance. We got to get back to the greeting, back to the command and control of saying, good morning, how are you doing? That shows that somebody is home. We are here, we are available for you. And again, light rail, we do have a reactive response most of the time in the 3 cities we operate, but that also has improved coming out of COVID. Working with Mesa PD in particular, about 8 different details we've done with Mesa PD, where Mesa PD comes out and works the platforms with us in areas that we both identify as possibly areas of high volume or high incident, and those have reaped rewards quite a bit. Having that extra presence, we did a listening survey or listening session with ACI, with our new CTO, Mike Powell, and the operators working in Mesa as they transition through, they actually have recognized they see more police presence on the light rail system there. So that's definitely been an advantage for us. The bus security coordination. When Dave Munley came on, Don Schneidmiller to my left here, who's a security manager, is over security for both bus and light rail. We had a 3-phase approach with Dave. One was first to get him out there and introduce himself. Coming from PD myself for 23 years, I will be honest with you, the bus and the transit system works in the background. It's something that until a transit unit was created, it was something that a local law enforcement would say, yeah, I know it's there, but I go when they need me. It's not something I proactively pay attention to. And that's just the nature of the business. But with having a transit unit, definitely that was the main focus for us for that. So with Dave, his first thing he had to do is get to know the commanders, get to know the transit employees, get to know those law enforcement entities that have bus operating in their cities, and really get them to pay attention to it. The next part of that is to collect data. So phase 2 is I want to see data. Having Jessica here, very data emphasized on what we need to focus our efforts on. Data was important. Share the data with the local law enforcement. And then finally, phase 3 is get cops on buses. And that the commute with a cop, Operation Blue Ride, we've actually started those in June with Mesa. And the next one will be Chandler in July. So the cops have actually, with their communication with Dave Munley and also working with the operators, have found those high volume, possibly high incident or problematic routes that the law enforcement entities can focus on. And that has been an advantage. And finally, Dave also created the bus blotter, which Polly mentioned and Brian mentioned as a best practice. So when they were out here and recognized the bus blotter, which emphasizes incidents, closure of cases, I think is very important for our operators that see crimes occurring on the bus. Maybe our passenger is called or been a victim. Dave is actually able to communicate with the courts and send that information back to the operators that a case has been closed. So that's very advantageous. On the rail side,
Can I ask a question?
yes, ma'am.
Right there where it says rail security staffing, the picture I see is an officer.
Yes.
Okay, so that's not allied security. That's an
That
officer.
is
from
allied
the-
security. That's allied.
Okay.
Yes, a field security officer, yes. So when you see officer, we're referring to field security officers, not sworn, but contracted
Okay.
security.
But they're limited.
They are limited, yes, ma'am.
Okay, I
Yes.
just want to get that cleared
Yes.
because when you tell me an officer, I think of a sworn officer.
Yes.
And I think of a sworn officer that has the ability to arrest. So I think there needs to be some clarity in that because I'm thinking sworn officer on the platform. When you're saying blue ride, I'm thinking of a sworn officer on a bus.
Yes, ma'am, that is.
Okay.
Operation Blue Ride is.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
All right.
So yes, so just to clarify the titling of officer, when we look at security guards, guarding a post or guarding a building, I know that when I was with law enforcement, take maybe a little bit of exception to folks who are referring to themselves as officers when they're not sworn. We do emphasize that these are FSOs, so field security officers. So trying to make sure that we do not confuse the public or confuse folks. These are civilian employees, civilian contractors.
Adrian, I know you're going to
Yes.
talk about this in a moment. Could you just spend a moment talking about the duties of the field security officers? Because we do need to differentiate between really the limits of their authority and the scope of their purview from that of our law enforcement partners.
Exactly. Thank you, Jessica. Madam Chair, members of the board. So there are unique differences between sworn and non-sworn on light rail. For the Allied Universal, who's the current contractor, they have civil authority. So what that means is the civil authority they have is in the transit ordinances specifically that are civil citations. Their main task is fair inspection and see something, say something, observe and report. They also have trespass authority. They are able to tell folks that they need to leave the system. They are an agent of Valley Metro by contract. So they have the authority to tell folks they need to leave the system or the trains. A person who refuses, however, say I'm not leaving, they do not go hands-on. They do not physically remove people. They do not have that authority to detain or arrest or charge criminally or arrest people for criminal charges. In that case, we need to have law enforcement assisting us in the removal of a person who refuses. For Allied Universal, those civil citations they write, again, a police officer can write these as well. So these are not limited only to contracted services. These are civil codes in Tempe, Mesa, and Phoenix that any officer, police assistant who's a non-sworn under the police department, who are in the light blue shirts in Phoenix, they can write these civil codes. So with Allied Universal as an agent of Valley Metro, they have trespass authority to tell folks they can leave the system. They have to leave the system. They inspect fares. They have handheld verifiers they use to inspect those fares, which will be transitioning to a new system with the fare modernization. And they can write civil citations. They also appear in court and can provide testimony. That's a requirement. As well, they have de-escalation training and what's called MOAB, which is their version of de-escalation training. And they have a form of training also in their guard cards that they are required to carry by the state, where they're able to assess, mental health assessment and also communicate with Community Bridges as a contractor for mental health support at Phoenix Cares. Go ahead. And the trouble we do have and limitation, which is another slide, I think I'll get to that in just a second, is the ID portion. Looking at the staffing here, that's if every position is filled, we have a build up of a bell curve, if you will, of staff that will layer up and build to the hours that you see here. If everyone is on staff and no dark shifts, that is our staffing.
Thank you. I think several other members
sorry.
have questions.
Yeah, I do.
Councilmember Tomlichoff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not really familiar with Operation Blue Ride and just want to make sure that I have an understanding. We don't have rail in Glendale anyway, so this would, I know it hasn't been tested anywhere yet, or just, I guess you said in Mesa so far. But so is it basically that through the commander, an officer's, basically their patrol, part of their patrol duties is to use the bus system?
Absolutely. We can also, part of the packet, we have a memo that went out to all of our bus contractors and staff that this Operation Blue Ride for Mesa just began, and Chandler is to follow. Chandler attended the Mesa briefing. So Chandler wanted to send some representation to Mesa's briefing on how Operation Blue Ride was going to work. And they are definitely interested and want to join in July. But to answer your question, is to make sure that the resources that the law enforcement agencies are going to apply to ride the bus in uniform are at those higher volume routes and routes that we've seen in our data, which is the phase 2, are going to get the most service for the ridership and for the operators who have been communicating to Dave Munley on where those locations are.
So, well, I would imagine the law enforcement data kind of lines up with it. Every municipality has data and knows where our hotspots are, and often, at least with us, some of our routes go right through those areas. So
exactly, and a good point to mention too. It's those incidents that law enforcement is not called. So when an operator knows that they have some negative behavior, maybe hasn't elevated to a crime stop or a 911 call, that they'd really like to have more presence, whether it be in uniform or covertly, that can also contribute to that control of the behavior and that negative behavior on the bus that makes the ride unpleasant for the riders and the operator.
interesting. Thank you.
Certainly, thank you.
Vice Mayor Adams.
Yes, thank you. I haven't heard you mention anything about Tempe PD.
Yes.
Any of this, are they participating also?
Yes, Tempe, thank you for the question. Members of the board, Tempe PD, Sergeant Trent Luco is an absolute wonder to work with. Definitely appreciate as a liaison. He is a sergeant with Tempe PD. Tempe PD has also an off-duty program. They fill it with extra folks and reservists and folks working on overtime. Tempe has definitely, as you know, a lot of special events and a lot of, yes, a lot of special events. And so in order to get that more proactive, get on the bus, get on the train, it's really contingent upon resources, but definitely Tempe, Mesa and Phoenix, all definitely, working with us on more proactive work on the bus and also on the rail.
Another question I have or observation is I take the rail down to games in Phoenix a lot of times, and like the last time I came down, and actually the time before that too, there were people that were drunk coming off the game and were getting in fights and verbal fights primarily, but I didn't feel safe, and I didn't call 911 because they weren't punching each other, but they were really disorderly conduct.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering what to do in that situation, and if we can, after the games particularly, that's when they're really drunk. So if we can get people on security officers on those rails after those games, I think that would be really helpful. On the way to the game, they're okay.
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
after the game, they're not. So I would really encourage that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for the comment, and Madam Chair, members of the board. This is something also that Sergeant Luco, we work with him on, and definitely because he is a liaison for light rail specifically, we can definitely make sure that we have not only Allied, which Allied does staff, the high volume platforms that are used for the egress, but to make sure that we have the presence on board after games. Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, go ahead.
Thank you. How we're deployed. So we have security zone configuration. So the zones, there are 9 completely complete in the system, all 28 miles. So of those 9 zones, how we operate in the business model of how we operate is to make sure that we have folks operating, number one, in the same zones as much as possible. They get to know the ridership, they get to know the areas, transit adjacent, if you will, those areas, and there's a familiarity in those zones. Also, we wanted to make sure with these zones that it takes about 8 to 9 minutes to get from end to end. It can't take 15 minutes or 20 minutes. They need to get off and get on the next train in their zone. There is also a bit of an overlap. So at every end of a zone, there's a beginning of a zone. It's not separated by the next station. It's at that station. So those teams get out and are able to communicate with each other. Also, we've split up the teams. So they're working 1 per car. So that has also been a benefit for us as well. It began in May. Just as we come out of COVID, and thanks to the board, we have the incentive for the additional pay per hour. We've had our vacancy rates diminish to 20%, which is a national standard average. It's not 56%. So we split the teams up, and that was the goal from the beginning. And the last slide, talking specifically about fare inspection, which I know is definitely of interest. The main task for Allied Universal in the contract services is, number one, be a presence. Basically, number one is be a presence, just like the CECs are a presence. Anyone that has some color of authority, safety vest, it can be one of Rob's maintenance folks, it can be a road supervisor, but their main focus is presence. Another key task is fare inspection. So their main task with fare inspection is checking every person, every passenger on board a train or at a platform. That fare inspection rate is based off of those APCs, those automated people counters. So based on that mathematical equation of what we get for inspection. And the Allied Universal issues, what we have with fare inspection is issuing that citation. So that civil citation, I said that they have civil authority to actually issue. You need to have valid ID. There needs to be a proper way to identify the person that we're writing the citation to. The courts mandate this. The citation actually belongs to the court, Mesa, Tempe, and Phoenix. So in order for them to adjudicate properly or serve a summons to a person, they need to know who they're serving. So getting ID, proper ID as a civil authority, as a civil agent can be challenging. Folks are not required to carry ID to ride public transit. Folks that refuse to present ID or walk away, that's a challenge for Allied Universal or any non-sworn. So when our challenge is looking at an enforcement is, number one, we want to recover the fare. We want people to come back and use the system. So if they don't have the right fare, they didn't tap before they boarded, they didn't buy the correct fare or validate it or any fare at all, is we want to recover the revenue. So that is the key focus, not to go right to citation. But that is a challenge for Allied Universal. Police support is definitely required and needed in order to properly identify folks in order to issue these citations. So that concludes my report on the security. I'm going to turn it over to Hillary.
There's a question.
Yes, thank you.
Member Harris.
Thank you so much, Chair. I had a couple of questions. I just kind of wanted you to get through your presentation.
Yes.
In terms of citations, that's a thing that I'm concerned about because, when riders ride, that's the public.
Mm-hmm.
They have mental health issues. They have different things going on. They have family emergency. They get stopped by one of the enforcers. They say, hey, we either been called because you did something wrong, or you could be boarding, not properly, or whatever that may be. Can you walk me through what's the approachment and then the de-escalation?
Absolutely. Councilmember Harris, members of the board. Definitely, as I said before, we want to lead with let's make sure you have the proper fare, educate. Never enforce then educate, but educate. So if folks who, and we do temperature checks, so myself, Don, Anthony, who's our security coordinator for rail, and Dave for the bus, we actually do our temperature checks so we can go out and actually see what is the response of the ridership. What do we see on the system as far as no fare? How do we manage when we don't have an officer here? And what are the, maybe the barriers, if you will, if there are any, to folks purchasing the correct fare? Leading with recovery is the first thing. If we can get someone to tap their card and to educate them that they do have to tap every time, because our handheld verifiers can show that they did not tap. So leading with that education piece first. Making sure that if we can get off the train with you and make sure you have the proper fare because you're going to return on the next trip, making sure you have that valid fare, and we'll show you how to buy your ticket if it was confusing. So folks that say I didn't have cash, or I couldn't understand how the machine worked, or it wasn't working. Let's make sure that we lead first with education. Warning, definitely, before we go to the enforcement piece. So that is definitely what we lead with.
Okay, my last question that I have for you is, you talked about de-escalation. I wanted to kind of know, can you give us an example of what's an escalation and then what's a proper de-escalation?
Well, I will thank you for the question. I will tell you first that, especially if have been, sworn first and now not sworn or retired, it definitely can be intimidating. As soon as the doors close for a bus or a train, but primarily for a train, because the operator is in the cockpit and not engaged necessarily with the ridership, can't see what's going on behind them. As soon as those doors close, if there's someone that's making a lot of noise and being disorderly, like you mentioned after the game, it can make a person feel a bit insecure with that noise. And primarily with Allied Universal also being non-sworn, is to first try to get some kind of communication started. Not to escalate with their voice and escalate with their body language, but to de-escalate, pull that person back down and have them engage with them. That's part of their MOAB training or their de-escalation training, is not to make the situation worse. Obviously, they have radio, getting support and assistance if necessary. The POIC, which is the public address system that goes to the operator, and the operator can then speak to the person, be Allied Universal. So it's really talking to the person, making eye contact. That's why we go out and we ride the system as additional non-sworn, but with our safety vests on with Valley Metro. And we get to see how people engage with us and how those techniques works and tactics work. So it's communication.
And then I guess my last question would be, one more question, is homelessness and how escalation, de-escalation works with homelessness. You may have riders that are experiencing homelessness. It's a rainy day or an extremely cold day, and yes, they did pay for the fare to get on the ride, but yet they're going to spend more time than a normal person because of homelessness issues. How do, when one of the officers acknowledges that, hey, this person's been in the same place for 4 hours, and how do you engage that, and how do you typically deal with addressing homelessness?
Thank you for the question, members of the board. That's an excellent question, and something that I think our panel peer review group also recognized is a national trend and issue for public transit to address. And even in our peer review mentioned having more engagement on the social service side. We do have Allied Universal and any employee in Valley Metro seeing the same situation. It's a destination-based service. So that's, first of all, we provide folks a trip. They are purchasing a trip or they're on the system to make a trip. So to go end to end and to ride all day, it's more of an outreach, education. This is a system to use. It's destination-based. How can we help you? Because I see you've been on here for 2-3 hours. We have the ability to call community bridges, Phoenix Cares outreach. Even if we cannot get a hold of those individuals, we do have local law enforcement who have those resources or contracts with, say, community bridges. And that's the first go-to. It's education, seeing how we can provide assistance if necessary. But we sell trips. We provide a service, and that's a destination-based service. So as someone that's recognized has been on the system end to end for a period of time, what their needs are. Do they understand that it's destination based and where are you trying to get to? But it's really the outreach.
Okay, yeah, because my biggest concern about that particular question was just more so making sure that we're not criminalizing homelessness
No.
and calling law enforcement because they've been on there and things like that, because that's a big thing. Homelessness is an issue. And I just want to make sure that we're not calling law enforcement to deal with issues like that because, you know, it's an issue. But also, we want to make sure that the riders feel safe, comfortable, and feel that they can have an enjoyable experience. I just kind of wanted to make sure that we're not criminalizing these types of behaviors because, you know, they have the same right that, you know, someone else.
Yes, absolutely. And like I said, the law enforcement piece is really if all of our resources have not responded. And it's really, law enforcement sometimes is that gateway to get that contracted service out to assist the person.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I have Councilman Stipp, and then after that, Vice Mayor Adams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before we go on to, before we leave the security part of this, I have heard all of this discussion about everything regarding light rail. I've heard very little about what's going on the bus system. And every month or every quarter, we get our quarterly reports. We see the incidents going up. We see the number of bus incidents going up, and we've talked virtually nothing about what we're doing on the bus side of our system, which is quite large and covers the entire valley. I know we're going to be limited on time, so I don't want to necessarily spend a lot on it today, but I think we need to talk about this system in its totality and not just the light rail part of it. I realize most of our system is controlled by contracted bus operator or the city of Phoenix. So we've got one or the other. But the security piece of this, I think we probably need to get some information on how it's handled on the bus system. I can tell you as a non-rail city, listening to this entire discussion about light rail is extremely frustrating. And I know that there are incidents happening on the buses, and we've talked about none of it. So that part is super frustrating, even to the point where we talked about Phoenix Transit Police being that's the go-to. Well, that's great in only one community. There are 19 communities that have bus service. So what's happening in the other 18 of them? So I think this may need further follow-up later to talk about bus security as we kind of go through. And then, and that's just my comments on the security piece. So I know you want to say something because I'm super frustrated.
Thank you for your question, Councilmember Stipp, members of the board, Madam Chair. I want to recall the bus security coordination conversation we had a few minutes ago and clarify. Allied Universal Security is the only security force that Valley Metro contracts with. That is paid entirely by Valley Metro Rail. What we are budgeted and resourced to do currently with bus security, it's Adrian's team, it's Dave Munley, that bus security coordinator. This is a new function. Dave has been in his role about a year. This was included in the budget cycle last year. We are right now really just working to leverage our relationships with our law enforcement partners, because outside of that bus operator and Dave, we don't have any personnel out on bus in the communities that we serve. That Operation Blue Ride that Adrian talked about, that is bus focused. And it is trying to draw our law enforcement partners onto bus so they understand here are our hot spots, but also just here's how you interact with the bus. They might not be aware of, hey, I can just board a bus at any stop. I can also pull a bus over at any time and board, and also inviting them to ride proactively. This is the same struggle that most systems have. So we can go about this a few different ways. We can continue to lean in which we should, to those partner relationships with our law enforcement entities. We can define and resource a group within Valley Metro that is focused on bus. That's something we can do. That's not something that we have at present. I don't have anybody to send out on bus every day. 70% of our customers every day are on bus. They might be on rail too at some point, but the bus is the reach of our system. So Councilmember Stipp, you are absolutely correct to shine a light on this issue. But we got to talk about resources and how we're going to be able to do that. Thank you for the question.
Vice Mayor Adams.
Yes, I just was wondering, you mentioned the Community Bridges Program. Are you guys also working with the HOPE program in Tempe?
We work, thank you for the question, members of the committee, members of the board. We work through on, with Tempe, the Hope Group.
Yes.
That would be through our Tempe police contacts.
Okay.
And when, like I gave this scenario, if with Councilmember Harris, his question on how we handle issues with folks who may need social services is going through sometimes the local police department to get those contacts. Absolutely.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And I'm assuming you're doing that with Mesa, because I don't, does Phoenix Cares, also, it's just Phoenix. So I just want to make sure that we're working with the whole entity and the whole system in this whole process.
Yes, if I could respond to more detail on the MESA program, which speaking to Councilmember Stipp's question on the focus on light rail, the bus security coordinator role for Dave Munley's leading that effort with Don is that specifically worked to focus on the bus routes 40, 45, and 112 and Country Club, and also connecting riders to human services staff. So that activity we perform in Mesa PD on the bus side, actively engage with the social services in Mesa and riding those routes. So that is an expansion of what we want to go to as far as branching out to the other member cities on the bus side, is using that Mesa Blue Ride as an example to now go into Chandler and then further through the region on the bus side.
Go ahead.
Mayor Max.
Councilmember White and then Councilmember Tomachov.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for the presentation. I think about the city of Avondale and how we have a lot of community-based policing. I feel like we really do make lives better for people out in Avondale. So to not hear you talk about the 3 in Van Buren is right here kind of draws concern to my heart, because I think about, why doesn't my son take the bus off of Van Buren and 111th Avenue right at the corner of my street to go to school? Well, there is a sense of concern for him and fear. So we get in the car and take him to school. So to me, these major bus routes that run, I love the East Valley. I started off living there, but that run from the East Valley to the far West Valley, we can't lose our attention on that. And I know that our law enforcement agency out in Avondale will participate if they're engaged. I know they'll participate if they're engaged. So I'm not sure how quickly we've been able to engage them, but that's just one thing. I'm not sure if we want to go all the way back to the initial review that was done, but I don't want to forget this question, Madam Chair, so I'm just going to put it out there. I was concerned with the drug and alcohol policy issue related to operators. And I want to know, will that impact our our federal funding? When we look at the Federal Transportation Administration in the future, we already got problems here with 400E. We don't need bigger problems with our operators. So I don't want that to go off of my radar as I think about it, because that's just a blaring HR issue to me. And I would hate for that horn to be silenced as we speak about security, because ultimately, if we don't have people who are of sound mind and body to go back to their de-escalation, or if we're not testing or doing what we need to do to ensure adequate funding for our system in places where we're just going to get it now, that to me is a long-term concern that has a horizon we don't want to look over. So I just don't want that to go off my radar. I know we're continuing this discussion and thinking about security, but ultimately I can't de-escalate if I'm drunk.
Yeah, I can answer that quickly, Madam Chair, Councilmember White. We conducted pretty early in my tenure, we conducted through our internal audit team an audit of what we call our hours of service. How long are our operators driving, and how are we providing and then monitoring the records for their training and drug and alcohol testing. Good news is that we did not find any patterns of violation of Department of Transportation hours of service rule, drug and alcohol violations or operators who were out of compliance with training and certification. What we did find is that we need to do a better job at defining within the organization who is responsible for working with the contractor to review those records and determining the specific cadence to make sure that we're constantly stay on top of it and we detect any potential issues before they become a real issue. And so that's what that finding was related to. We're on it. It's been a challenge for a lot of our peer agencies, and that's why we did those audits pretty early on a year ago.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to have that lens on it. I just want to make sure our drivers are the best in class as it relates to how we're interacting with them and prepare them to be ready and sharp when they have to encounter some of these issues and engage the appropriate agency at the appropriate moment. Thank you so much. Thank you for all you do.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Max. That was an excellent segue. What are the Valley Metro's response to the observations and recommendations from the peer review? And where can we find those if we have interest in seeing what, because I see all their findings and recommendations, but I don't see any response.
Yeah, we would be happy to provide that. We've included the draft report today, and we have an internal working document that catalogs each of those recommendations and our status. We would be happy to provide that to you. We've done the same for our operations and maintenance peer review that we conducted last year. I'm pleased to tell you most have been already addressed or in progress, but we'll provide that to you in writing so you can see that
Very
status.
good. Thank you.
All right.
Madam Chair, if you're ready. Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the board, happy to talk to you about another layer of visibility on our system. We do have customer experience coordinators. You'll hear us refer to them as CECs. We love our acronyms around here. These folks are today rail only. They are different than security in that they're not citing, they're not enforcing, they are educating, they are providing customer assistance. They are engaging with our customers. They are a welcoming face on our system. But again, that importance, as you can see, they're very bright and vibrant. They are an additional level of visibility on the system. There's 10 of them today. The program was really started in 2018, initiated in 2019 in response to some of these same concerns. And they are a great group of high-performing bunch that are really excited to be out with the ridership. And they're really deployed daily, including on the weekends and at nights, really based on ridership. So where are the riders at? Where are the ridership trends? And also they support special events. So hopefully you've seen a few when you're riding for those big special events. So just another layer that we wanted to share. Another very important layer is certainly our customers. Our customers engage with us. We have several two-way conversation opportunities. See something, say something, as Adrian mentioned earlier, is a national campaign. We also referenced it here locally about if you see something, say something. They are our eyes and ears on the system, and we have resources in order to be able to hear their concerns. Specifically, Alert VM, which is a Valley Metro rail safety and security app. It allows customers to type in or take a photo of concerns. They could be maintenance concerns, security concerns, a welfare check. And we have people who are sitting 24/7 who respond to those concerns and also liaison with security or maintenance as the issue needs. We have a dedicated team who also communicate with riders about the service disruptions, sometimes associated with these security events or safety events. There could be related service disruptions. And so through a variety of means, including communication with our member city staff, so your staff is well informed of what's going on the system, and certainly responding to media as well, making sure people are aware of the service impacts and how to maybe reroute their travel. I'm going to go into a rider survey. We do survey quite a bit our riders in order to garner their feedback. And my next couple slides are really dedicated to talking about a recent survey. So I'll try and be brief. So in actually mid-December of 2022 into February of 23, we conducted a rider security survey really focused on understanding current perceptions and experiences related to riders' personal security on the system. And the system here, we intercepted riders on bus, rail, and streetcar, all three of our modes. We conducted almost 1,000 interviews. 2/3 of those were through intercept, meaning we had surveyors walk up to riders and ask them these questions. We also conducted about 1/3 through a web survey. Let me emphasize this was geographically representative of our region. So we had surveyors from Goodyear to Chandler to North Phoenix really engaged in getting the full feedback from our ridership. You'll see throughout this survey that we make comparisons to 2 previous surveys. We conducted a safety-focused rail survey in 2019. So we see that 2019 reference that's from that previous survey. And then our last full rider satisfaction survey was done in 2018. So you'll see references there so we can see trends based on what our riders are telling us. So just overall, the good news is that a majority of our riders, about 70%, do feel safe and secure on the system, thanks in great part to increased security presence, which, as Adrian mentioned, we have worked very hard to get out of some of our workforce shortages, and those security teams are being felt by our riders. You can also see that many of the categories have remained the same or improved, including related to that presence and also cleanliness inside transit vehicles. There are areas that have certainly decreased, those in orange, as compared to the 2019 light rail survey, particularly related to, as our peer review mentioned, concerns related to behavior or experiences of fellow passengers and cleanliness at stations or stops. When asked why their personal safety has improved, riders share that it's related to seeing more security, as I just mentioned. Again, great hiring efforts thanks to this board and our team here, or they generally feel safe and secure. Certainly on the other side of the coin, we asked why they felt their personal safety has worsened. Riders shared, again, that negative behavior they're seeing related to mental illness, substance abuse, and those individuals experiencing homelessness. We also wanted to know what have riders personally witnessed. Some of the security sentiment is felt by a community, and we wanted to understand what they have personally witnessed. And you can see that about 50% of our riders have personally witnessed a security incident, an increase from the previous survey. And those incidents range from violent acts like fighting, intoxicated passengers, verbal arguments, and yelling. In addition to the security focused questions, we also ask questions just related to overall satisfaction, again, to see those trends from past surveys. Overall satisfaction has decreased, and I'll go into that here in a little bit. As compared to that 2018 survey, the majority continue to be satisfied with our level of service, and the bright spot that's not seen here is that our streetcar service in particular in Tempe was one of our highest rated level of satisfaction. Again, when asked why their level of satisfaction went up or down, related to those that were satisfied, there was references to just a general appreciation for the service and the connection it brings them, as well as it gets me to where I need to go. It's convenient and easy. The negative mentions are related to slow and lack of reliability of the service. And also there were mentions about professionalism of the drivers. I will say, and Jessica will help conclude here, but as we dug into the satisfaction data, really reliability is a focus of our riders. Obviously, the service is not reliable. It doesn't get them to where they need to go. So there are efforts that we are concentrating on to improve the schedule and the service. So I'm going to turn it back over to Jessica to help with closing.
Thank you, Hillary. So next slide, please. What we're doing now and possible future directions. So what we're doing now really encapsulates new efforts in the last 12 months and things that we have programmed in our workflow on an upcoming basis. We are really working within our safety and security team and also with our law enforcement partners to mine that incident data and then coordinate our deployment strategies. That's Allied Universal Security and our law enforcement partner details focused on those hot spots. We're increasingly collecting customer and community feedback. Hillary mentioned the customer survey, but we're also reaching out and communicating with our neighbors around our system, including light rail and bus. We're conducting listening sessions right now with our frontline team members. Those are our operators, also our maintenance of way staff, our cleaning staff who are driving buses or trains or cleaning those stations. Our job first and foremost is to keep them safe and secure so that they can serve our customers. We have seen an uptick in transit worker assaults here in Phoenix, as we have across the country. This has caught the attention of the Federal Transit Administration at a high level. You heard that from our peer team. So we are focused on their security. We're also working with Allied Universal to improve their supervision and training. Good news is we've resourced up that contract. Not great news is we've got a lot of new team members on that contract, and we have to increase our focus and provide a higher level of training. You heard from our peer review group that we need to look at that level of supervision. We've got 15 field security officers per supervisor, and especially for a new team who are dealing with the challenges we're seeing out in our communities, we're going to have to tighten up that supervision and support. Next slide, please. We're working on our fare collection modernization. This is important because we've got to have reliable fare vending equipment and easy and accessible mechanisms for our customers to pay their fares, and we've got to be able to inspect those fares.
We have a question.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I know that you mentioned FTA recognizing this. Are they going to provide financial support to help us with these issues?
They have some limited grant. The Federal Transit Administration, thank you, Vice Mayor Adams, for the question, does have some limited grant programs that are focused at usually providing temporary support for functions like engaging with social services or overhauling training programs. They also have developed a number of resource spaces within Federal Transit Administration that we can tap into to get help with improving our programs. They also have some requirements. We have a joint safety and security committee, for instance, that includes representatives of labor and frontline labor. That's in addition to the listening session. So some of those requirements are really intended to push agencies to do what we're already doing, which is to lean in to the challenges we're facing, get good data, and then come up with proactive solutions.
Have we,
Not a lot of funding, though.
have we applied for those grants?
We haven't applied for any of the program support grants yet. That's part of our upcoming initiatives that we're talking about now.
Okay.
Yeah. We missed one earlier in the year. I don't think we were quite ready to define that, but now we're in a position where we've got a better understanding of where we need to go.
Because it seems to me that we need more security on our buses and our rail.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the bottom line, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, there won't be any grants to support operating assistance to fund security forces coming from the federal level, but what they do provide is grants focused on capital equipment, but specific program resources. For example, one of where I think we should go is focusing on creating a social service coordination role that is able to liaise with the dozens of different entities that exist across the valley that we need to connect into.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Councilmember White.
Thank you so much. Just wanted to take a quick time to comment on the app and ask if the app has added any additional assistance, Jessica, with runtime and on-time performance. Are we able to drive that? Because I think the application for Valley Metro is phenomenal. It's got an excellent wallet on there. I could see people using this just to kind of tap in and move forward and manage their pass that way. I just hope it's helping with the on and runtime performance since it's been an opportunity.
Well, what we are doing to address the running time issue, and this was an observation of the peer review committee. Right now, we're conducting a detailed running time analysis of all of the routes in our system. That's bus, it's also light rail, so that we know how long it takes to get from point A to point B at different times that the day traffic patterns changed. So we're doing this analysis. We have some consultant assistance on board so that we can do it very quickly. Moving forward, this is part of our service planning program on an ongoing basis. It's something we should have always been done, and we sort of let go of that. It's a big deal for operator safety as well and operator satisfaction, because if you're running hot all day, every day, that creates a stressful situation. We're also, we hope to, this is actually on the consent agenda today for the regional public transportation agenda. We hope to conduct a comprehensive operational analysis, and that's that look at how the bus system is configured, looking for strategies to redefine the way our system is oriented to make sure we're going where people are going today. We'll utilize a really detailed survey that's just wrapping up that asks people their origins and destinations. We'll also use third-party data sets like census products, so we know how all people in the valley are traveling, not just those of us that we're capturing in transit trips today. So very important work, because getting people where they need to go faster and minimizing the time that they're standing at bus stops or stations and on board the bus is also a de-escalation tool. It keeps everyone a lot happier and a lot more comfortable.
I know that the times have been challenging, but thank you for making sure it's updated online when there are delays. That's
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job, team. Yeah. So some possible future directions. Here's some of the things, some of the things I think we need to do, and I like your feedback. I look forward to your reaction, is continued coordination with our law enforcement partners. We have a limit to our authority as a transit agency. We've got unsworn officers, as Adrian reviewed in detail. We have memorandums of understanding with our rail city law enforcement partners. I would like to strengthen those MOUs and spend time working together. And we've got good relationships and we're having these conversations with them. We need to really define what we do, what they do, how often, and what data we're going to share, and what we together are actually going to do with that data. Adrian reviewed our Allied Universal Security deployment across Valley Metro Light Rail and streetcar. We are almost fully staffed with Allied Universal Security, so the assets that we're budgeted for, they are out there. We might find ourselves wanting more resources on rail and or bus. As I mentioned earlier in response to Councilmember Stipp's question, we don't have a bus security force outside of the work Dave Munley is doing with our law enforcement partners. That's important work, that's foundational work, but we might need more. And then finally, engagement of social service providers is important. We're not a social service entity. We sell trips. We get people from point A to point B. We want to do so safely and efficiently. But a lot of members of our community are experiencing homelessness, substance abuse, mental illness, or some combination thereof. And Councilmember Harris, to your point, our job isn't to kick them off the system and just move them on. We need to better connect with those service providers, though. There's a labyrinth of service providers across the valley. I think part of that is defining a role. Perhaps it's a contract role. Hopefully we can find some grant funds to help support that so we can do a better and more deliberate job of making those connections. This concludes our portion of the presentation. We have taken a lot of time and we've shared a lot of information. I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to discuss security. It's a challenging issue. It is very real. It impacts our customers, as you saw from the survey, and we don't deflect, we don't look away from the challenges that we're experiencing. We lean into that, and I'm grateful for the support and leadership of the board, and we would love to hear from you and answer any further questions.
Councilmember Stipp.
Okay, last observation. Thanks for answering my previous question. We've talked a lot about the customer service experience, and I noted early on in the presentation from Polly that right now we are asking the contractor to be the customer service representative as well. They take the complaints from their service delivery, which makes some sense in one hand, but on the other, we have seen a number of times federal agencies that have let the fox guard the hen house. That seems to be a very similar kind of situation here. So I hope as we look at how are we going to be making improvements to security and customer service, we perhaps look at the customer service piece being brought into Valley Metro, because at the end of the day, there are customers, there are buses, there are contracts. We should probably know the types and the severity of the complaints that those not the operator, but the contract holders are getting. It's kind of a general observation.
Yep, this is an area of development for us. We have a customer service team. We are intaking customer contacts. We often push them out to the contractors, and there is a gap in closing that feedback loop, recording that response, making sure that customer is responded to. Right now, Adrian is working on this, Mike Powell, Chief Transportation Officer, working on this. We are nearing the end of a recruitment process for our Chief Customer Experience Officer. Our customer service team will be part of that professional's purview, and this is their job number one. Thank you, Council Member.
Vice Mayor Adams.
So just to be clear, because I have the same concerns, and are we gonna then move away from the contractors evaluating the complaints?
The contractor will have a role in that complaint life cycle, which might include, for example, counseling their team member. If it's an instance where a bus operator has been rude, for example, that this is one of our key complaint areas, but the Valley Metro team will receive that feedback and response from the contractor and ensure that's closed and make the determination of whether that's a valid or an invalid complaint. And sometimes all complaints are valid to the customer, but sometimes there's an instance where they say my bus didn't show up, and we can see via automated vehicle location that the bus was actually there on schedule. So we're taking back ownership of closure of that.
So will the contractors be doing the investigations on?
Sometimes they,
I really have a problem with that.
sometimes they have to, if it involves their records, determining, who is the operator on duty or who is the security officer on duty. But it has to be then undertaken with our staff in concert. And this is where we haven't had that engagement. So our subject matter experts, security or bus operations or rail operations, will also be involved in that. And that's a difference from where we've been in the past.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Councilwoman Thomas.
So I just want to make sure I understood. So you're saying, let's say, I'm going to pick, just say Councilmember Harris is on the bus and he's encountered some sort of situation and he files a complaint, and it's whatever the protocol that exists now is that it's managed through the system of our contractor. That one, if they've decided it's resolved, does that still come through Valley Metro and we have an opportunity to look at what the issue was, what the complaint was, what they consider the resolution, or is it closed once the contractor has concluded their part of the work?
We have access, so it comes in through Valley Metro, and then if a contractor is involved, it gets pushed out to the contractor, and we have access to their resolution. But what we need to be doing is playing a role in that investigation and resolution and verifying that the investigation and the proposed response to the customer is adequate, and ensuring that that feedback loop was closed back to the customer. That's that missing piece.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I find it a responsibility, maybe I'm out, of Valley Metro. So it's great that the contractor receives the complaint, but I would like to see Valley Metro then come in-house with the complaint and then really solve the complaint with the contractor.
Agreed.
Okay, because it sounds like the contractor still, and we have the ability to watch it and they still make a decision. That's how I was hearing it. And they still have really the responsibility versus bringing it in-house to Valley Metro.
That's right. So we will take that responsibility back in-house. There are a number of KPIs that the contractor collects data on and reports on, like on-time performance or maintenance inspections performed. We need them to do that, but it is up to us to verify that, because their contract performance is evaluated on key performance indicators like customer complaints.
Okay.
We're on it.
Well, so we were just having a side conversation. Are we made aware of the complaint when the complaint's initiated, or do we find out later? Or, because I'm still not sure I'm clear on how it works.
Yes, thank you, Council Member. We're aware of the complaint when it's initiated. It's actually initiated through Valley Metro. We actually take in all of the customer contacts for regional service, including City of Phoenix service, for example. So we're made aware, and the impacted or involved department within Valley Metro or City of Phoenix is made aware as well. So we're there in most of the steps in the process, but it's that determination of what went on and then that closure of the feedback loop to the customer. That's where we need to be strengthened. So we're there now, but there's room for improvement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I believe we have 2 public comments.
Oh, no, ma'am, that's for
No.
the board meeting.
Okay, all right, got it. I guess I would like to, any other questions? Anybody online have questions? I didn't see any hands. So. So I'd like to thank APTA for doing this peer review and all the peer reviewers who I had the opportunity to meet. What is very clear is that we need to do a no ridership study and a runtime study. What I also heard from operators is that they have concerns about the runtime studies, that needs to be really looked at because they are having difficulty being able to go to the bathroom because they're turning around and going, or where they're being placed. And we're starting to lose some operators in that arena. The other piece that I've heard from them was assaults, them being assaulted, and some of the violence or what is happening on buses, in particular buses, and they're not protected on how to or really know what to do during that time. It's obviously public safety. We really need to work in that arena, in the sense, I'm not saying that we're not, but we need to improve it for just public trust. It's very important. And what I also heard is support for the SSQA training in between with interim quizzes, and really the de-escalation piece. And I'm looking at a holistic way of a system of the de-escalation piece, starting with also with our internal Valley Metro Allied Security, but also with our law enforcement. And it be a whole series, not that they don't know, but a whole series of de-escalation that they understand. Everybody's in sync and understands what they need to do in a de-escalation versus a training over here for one and a different type of training. I would like the top-notch training to happen. And then the blue ride, I think that really needs to increase quickly, or get all the cities in, all the 19 cities involved, and start that blue ride sooner than later. And all of them understand what it is, what the sample, what the model is, and then how do we then increase it through all the 19 cities. So that's what I heard. I don't know if anybody else, Councilwoman Tomachak.
I'm sorry, but I had forgotten about this slide 39, where it's going through the rider survey, and it's the distribution of geographic locations of riders that were engaged. And out of all of the riders engaged, only 12 of them, it just says West Phoenix. It doesn't even say West Valley, 12%. And then it says other. So I'm just a little curious. I mean, you've got the West Valley's got a large share of, we don't have streetcar, we don't have light rail, but we've got a lot of transit riders in the West Valley. So how do we know how do you determine, how do you break this down, and how do you know you're getting a real good sample of feedback from people valley-wide, which is what our service area is?
So, Madam Chair, Councilmember Tomachak, we engage a professional market research firm that helps us extrapolate. So when we do a survey, we take a look at the ridership and make sure that our sample is representative of today's ridership. I'm happy to give you what's in there is a high-level overview of where they ultimately surveyed. I can give you a more drilled down version of which cities and how, and we have all of that very drilled down. So I'm happy to share that greater detail with you.
All right, that'd be great. I'd like to know what other is.
Sure. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
Chair Pastor, I think
Yes.
a large part of where we ended is maybe taking a look at the complaint space and how complaints are reviewed and escalated back into Valley Metro from the contractor.
Thank you. Thank you. So what I would also like to see, as stated earlier, we were given some recommendations and then to see what we're doing or what we've done, and then where's the gap and where we need to go. I think that's very important for all of us to have that information. Any other comments? Study session adjourned. We are now moving. No, we got to keep going. No, I'm just joking. 5 minutes. 5 minutes, 5 minutes. 1 minute.
Way over there.
All right, here we go.
Agendas on the wall.
Welcome to the Valley Metro RPTA and Valley Metro Rail. It is not 11:15. I have no clue what time it is. 1:04. Welcome members to the June meeting. Pat, will you take the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. City of Avondale, Councilmember Maxine White.
Present.
City of Buckeye, Councilmember Clay Goodman.
Present.
City of Chandler, Councilmember O.D. Harris.
Present.
City of El Mirage, Councilmember Monica Dorsey.
Present.
Town of Fountain Hills, Vice Mayor Peggy McMahon. Town of Gilbert, Mayor Bridget Peterson. City of Glendale, Councilmember Lauren Tomlatoff.
Here.
City of Goodyear, Councilmember Bill Stipp.
Present.
County Supervisor Jack Sellers. Oh, okay. City of Mesa, Vice Mayor Francisco Heredia.
Here.
City of Peoria, Councilmember John Edwards.
Present.
City of Phoenix, Councilmember Laura Pastor.
Present.
Town of Queen Creek, Vice Mayor Jeff Brown. City of Scottsdale, Vice Mayor Kathy Littlefield. She is on the WebEx. City of Surprise, Councilmember Ally Klein. City of Tempe, Vice Mayor Jennifer Adams. She is present. City of Tolleson, Councilmember Aldolfo Gomez. Town of Wickenburg, Mayor Rui Pereira.
Present.
And Town of Youngtown Mayor Michael LaVault.
Yes, Pat, I'm here.
Great, thank you.
All right. If a committee member would like to ask a question or make a comment during the meeting, please type your comment in the box and it will be read aloud and answered. All meeting attendees, please mute your computer, microphone, or phone. Item number 1 is public comment. The public will be provided with an opportunity at this time to address the committees on non-agenda items and all action agenda items for the joint RPTA and VMR meeting agendas. Up to 3 minutes will be provided per speaker unless the chair allows more at their discretion. A total of 15 minutes for all speakers will be provided.
Shannon McBride.
Testing, testing. Good, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Shannon McBride. I am a native, born and raised in Phoenix, and I currently run an organization called 19 North Community Alliance. And I have been doing work to along the alignment of Northwest Phase 1 and now Phase 2 for about 10 years now. And my primary role is to build collaborations with city offices, police, businesses, schools, neighborhood groups to make communities safer. So we've done a lot of things in the 10 years that we've been working together. And I have considered Valley Metro a partner the whole journey. Adrian and Hillary and Dawn, we've been in this journey the whole time. And I wanted just to say that the first thing, I'm very encouraged by what I'm hearing at today's meeting. The perspective that I bring is really not so much about from writers, but communities along the light rail, businesses along the light rail, and the concerns that they are expressing to me regarding safety. So those same problems that happen on light rail end up coming off light rail into the communities that are adjacent. I want to also recognize we are in the middle as a nation of a fentanyl crisis. We really are. And everybody's feeling it. So the same things that I'm going to be sharing with you, I share with every business. Like every business is having to make adjustments to improve the safety of their businesses, from hiring security to adding fencing to closing doors and making one entrance. Like this is our new reality as a city. So what the light rail is saying and what I'm hearing with safety improvements, it's the same thing. It's just a big, long business that runs through the city of Phoenix, but those same adjustments are necessary to keep the system safe. I want to say that I have 4 things that I would recommend, and I was encouraged because I could hear them in the presentation, so that was exciting for me. Certainly, as I would say to any business, focusing on CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design. How are we creating those stations? What are we doing on the light rail, around the light rail that can deter criminal activity? And I'm talking about drug-related crimes, because I believe that is what's hurting our communities the most, is this fentanyl crisis and the drug-related crimes that we all are having to deal with every day. So CPTED principles, continuing to use those. I do believe that we need legal enforcement, and that is our Phoenix PD. Right now, my understanding is that there are 8 different transit positions in PD that have been funded that are open. And I know hiring's hard, I get it, but let's take advantage of those funded 8 positions that are for transit. Let's get them hired and let's partner with them to make our systems safer. I also would, as you said, partnering with outreach organizations, similar QT, you may know this, is actually paying a nonprofit called Phoenix Rescue Mission to do outreach at their stores. So that same sort of intentional contracting to make sure that we're offering services to those who are in crisis, I would highly recommend. And then I do think increasing touch points for customers. And that starts with ticketing. From the very beginning, customers need to buy a ticket. That's just part of how we begin the security for our buses and our light rails. And then all along the light rail process, having connection with people so that there's visibility of not only security, but as you mentioned, hosts and people that are eyes and ears that are keeping an eye on the line. So I heard those things in some of what I heard today, so I'm very encouraged. I am here to partner. I believe that that the light rail, I'm a proponent of light rail, and I want to make it as vibrant, as safe as we possibly can. And I'm here to partner to make that happen and to do whatever I can to help. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for being here.
Mr. Crowley?
Oh. Jessica, could you get Councilmember O.D. Harris would like the information from Shannon McBride, her information. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. I love the survey you did, and I asked how many Karens that were talked to on it. I find it fascinating that you expressed that the survey was 50% full-time employment and 50% white. Well, I was just on the rail, and I know there was one white guy on there, but my car was not 50% white or white male. And when you say that you got a cross section of it, you're right, Glendale. I don't see where it says these were the ones that they did. It says here, light rail and on-street car. Goodyear Park and Ride. Is there a streetcar or a rail there? I know we got a railroad that goes through there, but how is it that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing there? Also, when it comes to the ridership and making sure that people are paying their fare, why do we have it at 65 for the elderly? Why haven't you dropped it to 55? When you also say that we're destination bound, right now it is going to be, what, 9 minutes of exposure out in the sun until it's injurious to your health. So the problem is that the destination some of our homeless need is to get out of the sun. Riding back and forth on it, that's a crime. And you want to put police on the buses. Well, it used to be that police and fire rode the bus for free. That was their way of making sure that the police were a part of the equation. Well, you could do that again. But I ride the bus. You're going to put a cop on the bus. Why? Am I a crime? Just like the homelessness? So is it not just homelessness, but ridership that is criminal? Instead of, one of the things that happen is when there's overcrowding on a bus, that we do get some of those hostilities. And your answer is, well, put a cop there. What you need to do is get more buses out there. What you need to do is keep on expanding the system. In your budget, you're going to replace 419 buses over the next 5 years. Where's the new buses? Where's the expanded service? Where is Avondale fully covered by bus service on the grid? Where is Glendale fully covered on bus service on the grid? Where is the bus going to Wickenburg? When is that going to get reestablished? But what you find to be most important is we got to get more cops, because Miss Ruiz says we got to make it safer. Like I said, how many Karens did you talk to?
Thank you, Blue. Item number 2, I would like to speak to Michael Waru. I know I'm saying it wrong. Do we have to go into executive session for this?
Chair, no, you don't. The item is noticed on the public agenda. If the board would like to enter into executive session, it would be done on a motion, a second, and a vote. If there's no need for the executive session, you can bring up the action item in a motion and we can just take a vote on it.
Okay, item number 2 and 3. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Just before we go into that decision, wanted to know, like, historically, how has it historically been done, and if we're stepping out of what the decorum typically is. So I just kind of wanted to know that.
Madam Chair, if I may, Councilmember Harris, we typically go into executive session to discuss the matters that we discussed last month. So this is a duplicative executive session of what we did last month. So before you is the draft item, contract amendments that we talked about last month. If we need to go in, we certainly can, but if not, we can just move to item 3 and that's just make the contract changes. So we're not doing anything out of the norm. Did I get that? Since I didn't go to law school, did I get that?
Madam Chair and Board Member Harris, I can confirm that there were not any changes to the amendment that were not already discussed in the last executive session.
So this item, as we discussed in the last executive.
I'm sorry. The reason why I mentioned is because I wanted to make sure that that we, attorney-client privileges happen when we push stuff into executive session. We lose some of that privilege when we take it out. I just kind of wanted to make sure that there was still that layer of protection. That's why I specifically mentioned it. Thanks.
Okay, item number 2 and 3 is an item that we discussed in our last executive session. We had a conversation in our last executive session about the CEO employment agreement. And we, in our last executive session, we made some amendments, or we discussed these amendments, and now it's up to a vote. If anybody wants to go into executive session, we can go into executive session, or else I'm going to take it to a vote. Any comments from the virtual space? All right, Vice Mayor.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion by Vice Mayor Adams and a second by Councilmember Tomachov. Any discussion? All right. Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I hear any nays? No nays, ayes carry. Item 2 and 3 have been passed. Item number 4, Chief Executive Officer's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I will be very brief. Just looking ahead at our July calendar, as a reminder, we do not have a meeting of this board in July. However, in the month of July, we are already working to prepare for our August cycle, which commences on August 2nd with the Transportation Management and Rail Management Committee's Audit Finance Subcommittee, August 3rd, and then our Board of Directors will meet on August 17th. I have one more announcement. It is my great pleasure to share with you that my colleague Michael Walrow has been selected and has accepted formally the role as Chief Legal Officer. Michael has done a wonderful job in the past 2 years, in the past year as interim general counsel. He has made tremendous contributions in the areas of contract management. He's worked to mitigate risk to the organization on several different cases. He's a good member of our team and is working very well with his peers across the organization, and I think is a wonderful support to the board as well as to Valley Metro. So please join me in congratulating Michael on this role.
Congratulations.
And then, next slide, please. And then finally, one more.
Stephanie and I are playing with
Oh.
the keyboard. There we go.
One more. Of course, we have elections this month for a new roster of board officers beginning in the month of August. But I want to thank our chair, Councilmember Laura Pastor of Valley Metro RPTA, and our chair, Councilmember Jennifer Adams, Vice Mayor Jennifer Adams of Tempe. In the past year, under Councilmember Pastor's leadership, we have confronted several difficult challenges, including our workforce shortage. In this room a year ago, I was reporting to you that we were missing in some instances 9 to 10% of our service because of our workforce shortage. Because of the leadership of Chair Pastor and this board, we have been able to restore workforce for our frontline team members. That's why we've been able to field this Allied Universal Security Team. That is why today we're missing less than 1% of our trips. Councilmember Pastor has also led us in a fashion that demands that we engage with our community. She listens to her stakeholders and constituents. I've had the pleasure of visiting council members' constituents in a number of town hall forums where we're listening to their concerns, and she demands that we be responsive to them as we should, as is our duty. So Chair Pastor, I want to thank you for your leadership. Vice Mayor Jennifer Adams. And come on up. And while you're on your way up, I want to recognize Vice Mayor Jennifer Adams, who very early in her tenure on Valley Metro's board took the position of chair of Valley Metro Rail. She is pushing us to do better. She asks difficult questions, and I welcome that. We're responsive to that. And she's also been instrumental in helping us to work to improve our relationships, not just with City of Tempe, but with all of the communities that we serve. Vice Mayor Adams and Chair Pastor, please join us. We've got a little presentation for you. I didn't get a pink memo. Yeah. That's so cool. Okay, so where are we going? Here. Should have worn that.
Yeah, you should have.
Yep, right. Yeah. 1, 2. Oh, I'm sorry. Come on,
Brooke, you want to come over?
Stay put.
You can come over.
Stay put.
It's always one more picture.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Work on hers. Got some back pictures.
Awesome. We'll get you one, don't worry. All right. Item number 5, legislative update.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I want to provide an update and create opportunity for discussion around the very important topic of renewing Proposition 400. As you're all aware, we've been pushing out news articles and updates. Last week on Tuesday, June 13th, the House and the Senate voted and passed Senate Bill 1246, which was a partisan and unworkable extension of Proposition 400. Now that occurred on Tuesday, and I want to tell you, leading up all the way up through the previous Saturday morning, we thought we were in a good position. We have been negotiating and meeting with Senate and other legislative staff for many months now. But this particular bill was born out of 11th hour negotiations between their own members. It resulted in a product that differed greatly from the language that Governor Hobbs previously worked out with Republican leadership. Senate Bill 1246 would call for 2 separate ballot measures placed on the Maricopa County ballot, bifurcating road and transit measures. Shortly after the bill passed, Governor Hobbs issued a statement indicating that she would veto the bill. She did indeed veto the bill yesterday. In her veto letter, some of the statements she made was that Senate Bill 1246 fails to meet the everyday needs of Arizonans. Instead, a minority of legislators unilaterally crafted a plan going against the public's desires and weaponized the very roads on which everyday Arizonans rely to get to work and improve their transit experience. Moreover, this regressive plan jeopardizes not only Maricopa County's economic vitality, but that of the entire state, setting Arizona back for decades. At this moment, the legislature is in recess until July 31st. We don't know yet if a modified version of the bill will be heard by the legislature. We've been continuing to work very closely with MAG, with our city stakeholders, dialoguing with this board. I remain optimistic, disappointed, but optimistic that we'll find a path forward, hopefully through the legislature. If not, we would need to bypass the legislature and take the ballot directly to the state, focused on an initiative that would free Maricopa County from legislative approval for ballot initiatives for its voters. Again, this isn't Valley Metro or this body that is making that decision, but we're working closely in concert with MAG and with our member cities. And as you all know, Maricopa County is the only county in Arizona that has to gain legislative approval before going to our own voters. Finally, we know that the Momentum Plan, the People's Plan, has overwhelming support from the people of Maricopa County. It has unanimous support from every single Valley mayor and the leadership of MAG. And I believe that plan and program has the support of this board as well. At this point, I want to invite discussion on this important topic.
Mike.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair. Also, I just kind of wanted to add on top of what you shared, that there was a recent statement that was put out about Proposition 400 statement. The people that signed this statement was Mayor Kay Gallego of Phoenix, Mayor of John Giles of Mesa, Ken Wise of Avondale, Kevin Harkey of Chandler, Corey Woods of Tempe, and Bridget Peterson of Gilbert. And basically, some of the same sentiments was, as the mayors of some of the largest cities in Arizona, we have been advocating for an extension of Prop 400 because it's the largest economic development plan in our state's history to ensure our continued vibrance as a region and presents comprehensive transportation options that benefit all Maricopa County residents and businesses. Unfortunately, just to your sentiment, unfortunately, it's a very small group of lawmakers, including legislative leaders in the House and Senate, are refusing to let Maricopa County residents vote on this plan at the ballot box, despite years of public planning and unanimously endorsement of the region's 32 mayors and tribal leaders. Our significant concessions, more than 30 in all, have included more freeways and cuts to public transit, including limiting light rail expansions. This uncompromising band of lawmakers is blocking a comprehensive transportation plan that benefits all the Valley residents and will ensure the region's transit infrastructure is built to support rapid future growth. So I just kind of wanted to read that. That's posted. I actually posted on my Twitter. I retweeted it and stuff. It's just to the sentiment of how much, how far is the legislators willing to go to block such an effort that the people really want. It's not even, at this point, I go out and I talk to many people. It's not even us anymore. It's literally the legislator have made it their decision, their own decision, to create this atmosphere of unwillingness to work and cooperate. And it's sad. It's a sad day when the people are not heard and their voices are not lifted through the people that they voted for. And I just I'm just disappointed. I'm really, really disappointed. And as a person that is local and a person that's on the boots on the ground all the time, the legislators can do better than what they're doing, but they choose not to do better. And I don't, this is not about partisanship. This is just about people, and so it's unfortunate, but I stand with what my mayor signed, and I'll continue to advocate to see this thing through, as many of those that's listening or rebroadcasting this will do the same. Thank you.
I have a comment, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I know some of us have been, maybe a little more involved than others, and it became obvious, right? I mean, when we were literally thought we were on the verge of being able to, secure the support that we need to move this forward, it became obvious that there were some trying to undermine, even with putting out false narratives of Valley Metro's position on certain things. It's just become, I think, glaringly apparent that we thought we were negotiating in good faith, and that turned out not to be the case, which is really a shame because, as Councilmember Harris said, this is about real people, about their real life, their real ability to be able to get where they need to go. This is not some gamesmanship opportunity for people to prove political points. This is about real people. And it's really a shame that people see this as an opportunity to seize, to get likes on Twitter and things like that. It's really, really sad that that's what this has come down to. I hope, and also, by the way, Mayor Ken Weiss was on the radio this morning and did a fantastic job as the MAG chair, and basically kind of graciously, but still called out the opposition and said that, we have negotiated, that there's been lots of negotiating. The negotiating has all taken place on this side of the ledger. And that we are still trying to work a deal. So hopefully the other side will come back to the table in good faith. But this is not a game. It's just, I wish they really understood that this is not about, political, moving yourself forward politically. You represent everybody, not just us, but the people at the legislature. They represent real people. And I hope that somehow we can get that message to them. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Vice Mayor Peggy McMahon.
Good afternoon. I concur with my fellow board members. It's been really, really frustrating to go through this process, I'm sure for you and everybody else. But my question is, I feel as though this is being purposely done. And I feel like they're pushing it out and pushing it out and pushing it out to force us to take a different action and to even prolong eventually having the voters decide for Prop 400. So the consequence, I'm asking about the consequence of that to Valley Metro and the funding and perhaps a timeline if that happens and the plan that you have for remedying that situation so that the voters can speak and vote in Prop 400.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, Madam Chair, members of the board. For our part, Valley Metro continues to advocate on behalf of funding the transit system. We continue to work alongside our colleagues at MAG to participate in conversations. We're not directly negotiating. We are providing over and over information that has been requested. We are prompt, we are thorough, and we are professional in each of our dealings. With respect to the expiration of Proposition 400 on December 31st, 2025, as we march closer to this, and certainly if we don't have the opportunity to go to our voters in calendar year 2024, we will tighten our plans for potentially reducing service. We're already experiencing some project impacts, not as much as the highway side. All of those highway projects and Proposition 400 as envisioned, it's mostly highways and arterials. Right-of-way acquisition has been suspended, causing those project costs to increase and putting more burden on the taxpayers for the very same projects that were included in the original plan. For our part, the failure to continue Proposition 400 would result in halting planning and design on the capital extension, which is the light rail expansion along I-10 West, the most congested interstate corridor in our valley. But perhaps more immediately and more importantly, it would demand that Valley Metro and member cities come up with different ways to fund our local bus service and our paratransit service, else we would be forced to discontinue that service. I am so optimistic that this region, the leadership of our region and the voters in our communities are not going to let that happen. It is too important to cease investing in transportation infrastructure and mobility services in the fastest growing county in the country right now. The very thought of that is incredibly irresponsible. So while it has been frustrating, and I remind our team and our stakeholders of this every day, we're going to see our way through that. The service we provide is too important to the people and the families that we serve in communities across the valley. Same is true of the projects and programs that are included for highways, arterials, innovation, and other investments.
Councilmember Ali Klein, and then Councilmember White, and then Vice Mayor Adams.
Thank you. A number of us in the city of Surprise have regular meetings with our constituents, and with the assistance of Jody Tess, who is our intergov, we have presented the information about the risks of not approving 400 extension, and provided everyone who asked, and some who maybe didn't ask, with a list of their legislators and a sample letter that they could write, so that they didn't have to work at it except to write it and send it. And I have to say that in my district, we have had a great outpouring of folks who have reached out to their state representatives that are involved in this process to say, this is something that we want. And I know that all of us in the city of Surprise are actively working with our residents to make sure that that feedback is getting to our legislators. So we are in support of this process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. CEO Medford Miller, I really appreciate everything you and your staff have done to keep us educated and abreast of all of the different changes and the forms that the state legislature have taken a look at transportation and 400E extension. I think as Arizonans, we all need to be very cautious and concerned that the legislature is still extending their term, so they will go back into session in July, which puts us all at the back end of anything that this legislative session has accomplished won't be enacted for 90 days until 91 days until after they close their business for the year. So we're kind of fish out of water right now because what they normally go 100 days and then that's it. So one, we know they're not acting in a consistent manner to how prior legislatures have acted in Arizona. But when I take a look at Avondale specifically, and I'm very grateful for Mayor Wise's leadership on MAG. I think about how if we just think about the people I see at the bus stop, they need the bus or they wouldn't be at the bus stop. They need transportation. We need public transportation. We still have some very remote agricultural areas in Avondale, and the bus actually does drive past these farms. They're on major intersections. You can come and see the corner of Van Buren and Avondale Boulevard, and there's a ton of development there. Yes, we're opening up the boulevard, but there's a huge agricultural site south of Van Buren. And so I think that the people who are making these decisions for us are not thinking about cities, they're not thinking about towns, and they are not thinking about their constituents. So I hope that, if nothing else, they will understand that they are leaving parts of industry and business that we need in our communities. We need food, we need workers to move from one side of town to the other. And this is really hurting us in Maricopa County. And people need to hear that, and we need to cry it out from every town, valley, hill that we have. Valley Metro is servicing everybody, all 19 cities represented here. I know that we have our concerns about, rail versus bus, but paratransit is something that a lot of us need everywhere. And the people who ride public transportation need public transportation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Adam.
I want to echo the comments made by my colleagues on this Proposition 400. This affects the livelihoods, it affects our businesses. Just on Apache alone, we've had over $1 billion of development take place because of light rail. That would never have happened without light rail. And it's transforming that was a very bad area into a really safe area, a good area now. And that's because of light rail. And the fact is that our business community, it was going to be devastated by this kind of action and by not getting this passed. And I think it's cruel to our community members to Max's point about the most physically challenged folks are going to be devastated by this. And like I said, I want to make clear that this is cruel to our community. And I am tired of this issue and them holding us hostage in Maricopa County. Thank you.
Councilmember Dorsey.
So I think it's time for us to, as a group of elected officials who who come from the cities who have been involved and worked with MAG in getting this, they need to hear, the legislature needs to hear something different now. They are not going to deal with us in good faith. Putting that return to session to July 31st has a very, very detrimental effect on whether or not an initiative could be put forward onto the ballot in November of 23. Yeah, 23. So we need to stop talking about the legislature coming back, and we need to talk about that initiative being filed and being filed promptly with the goal of having this go on the ballot in 2023. Now, that ought to tell them that we're pretty serious about this, that we represent people who are very serious about this, and that, you know, they're horsing around down there and stalling and pulling all kinds of bad faith maneuvers in the negotiations are over. It's going to go to the voters, and we need to get on with it. That's where I'm at. Get that initiative filed, and let's get on with getting the signatures.
Thank you. Councilmember Stipp.
I don't think you intended this to be a roundtable by everybody, but, you know, I think rather than repeating what all of you have said about the economic development impacts and the public service for the folks that really need this, there's a couple of other components. One is the air quality issue. Maricopa County is not going to meet its federal requirements for air quality unless we get a few less cars on the roadway. And the only way to do that is going to be through public transit. Excuse me. I think, you know, this whole situation being multifaceted, if you thought I was frustrated earlier, this is very frustrating. And I sat through the Transportation Policy Committee meeting yesterday at MAG, and so this is like my second day of getting beaten on this. But I share everyone's frustration. I want to kind of think about what do we as an organization, what do we as Valley Metro need to do to promote the services that we provide. I think in this upcoming year, we need to be very vocal about what we are doing to benefit all of these things that we have all talked about. I said yesterday after the TPC meeting, I said, we are in the middle of a street fight and we are still wearing boxing gloves. It is time for us to maybe take the gloves off. We don't need to bring weapons, but we've got to take the gloves off a little bit. And I apologize for the horrible analogy, but I think it is very resonates very well. So I think from a Valley Metro perspective, I'm hoping that in this very short term, but throughout this year, we will become a little bit more vocal about the services that we're providing and the people that we're assisting, and getting everybody to understand, even if we get this through the legislature, we still have an uphill climb to get it through the voters. So we have got to really ramp up this public education campaign. And I hope that everyone on this board will join in and be part of that as we move forward.
Councilmember Littlefield.
Here we go. Thank you. Well, I've talked to a number of people in Scottsdale and around the entire city, and unfortunately, I can't agree with you that everybody in the valley wants this. Not everybody does. And Scottsdale voters, by and large, they're, you know, there's people on both sides of this issue. They want a separate vote, one on light rail and one on everything else. And I think the reason for this is they believe that that's their right. This is their money, and they should have the right to determine how it should be spent. It's kind of, you know, you can't say everybody wants it. Not everybody does. And they want to have the choice of whether or not to do this, and whether or not to do light rail, and then whether or not to do the freeways. And I think basically they're fine with the freeways, but they're not fine with the light rail. And I think because the valley is by and large not New York, not Chicago, it's not as dense and compact as those places are where the light rail maybe makes more sense. They don't want it. And I know you don't want to hear this, but I'm going to be honest with you guys and give you the feedback that I have received, not from one or two people, but from a lot of people who are saying, no, we're funding a loser here. It's not going to make it, and we need to use our money for something that will help people. And that's what I'm getting, and that's where we're going on this. It's it's they want two votes is basically what it is, and they want what the legislature put up, which is one vote for the road and one vote for the rail, and they want to be able to divide that because they feel that's more representative and gives the people more option and more representation. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat?
Here, I have a comment from Council Member Clay Goodman. And he states, I agree with all that's been stated, wholeheartedly agree. We move forward in supporting a standalone referendum.
Councilmember Tomachov.
Thank you. I'd like to respond to the comments made by Councilmember Littlefield. The legislation that the governor vetoed was not simply just two separate votes. There were severe cuts to other transit programs in there, and which are important. And I also wanted to make the point, so maybe look at the legislation so you understand that there were quite a few differences between the two, there being two separate votes. It was quite different than what had been proposed. And we've negotiated, Valley Metro has negotiated, and MAG has negotiated on behalf of transit users and riders. And let's keep in mind that I think Mr. Zerker told us that 68% of the people who use transit don't have another mode of access to any other mode of transportation. These people need to get to work, they need to get to the doctor, they need to be able to go about their daily lives, and they don't have another way to get there. So this isn't just about light rail, and that is, I think, short-sighted view of some of the people in our state legislature. And the other issue is that the tax money also belongs to cities with light rail. This regional sales tax is paid in Maricopa County. So Phoenix residents pay tax. They've clearly said over and over again, they support light rail. This Tempe residents and Mesa residents pay this sales tax. Those residents clearly support light rail and their share, and they scaled way back what was going to go to light rail in the version that was agreed on at MAG. So the scenario that you're talking about, while Scottsdale residents have the right to say, what they want to say, the taxes are being paid by the cities. And I think I'm pretty safe in saying that Phoenix has got a bigger tax base than any of the rest of us. And also the fact that this is unlikely to pass, even the regular transportation, if you separate it out, unlikely to pass without the voters from Phoenix and Tempe and Mesa coming along. So the issue is a little bit bigger, I think, than the way you were framing it, that Scottsdale voters don't want it. Thank you.
There, any other comments? All right, well. All I have to say is how I'm looking at this is a short squeeze. And I look at it as a short squeeze, and I'm gonna use the analogies of public school systems since I'm an educator and a former board member. And if you have watched how the school system battle or process has been moving through, little by little, money is being taken away from public schools and being placed in other areas, right or wrong, but that's what's happening with our public schools. I look at this the same way as a slow squeeze to us, and little by little, a chipping away. And to be quite frank, I think as a Valley Metro, as an entity, we have to do a better job in the sense of telling our story and telling why we are valuable and what we do and what type of impact we do into everyday people's lives. And that means we need to get those testimonies up and going and saying, why do you take the bus? Why is light rail important to you? How do you get to school? How do you get to work? I have a veteran that takes a bus and light rail to get to the veterans hospitals. These are true people, real people that live in our communities that need to function every day and move. So I am asking Valley Metro and my colleagues to figure out a good marketing plan so that we can get out into our communities and that they are people, representative people of our cities that people understand and can relate to, of all ethnicities, genders, economic capacity, because it's many for many ways. But if we don't start fighting, we're losing. And I'm a fighter. And I'm not going to lose. And if I lose, I'm taking you with me. So that's the way it happens in my world. And so it's important that even the staff and employees and MAG and the city of Phoenix and city of Tempe, all the cities, all our big cities and small cities, start the testimonies and do it in a very organized campaign fashion that all of us are able to do through text messaging, emails, social media, door to door, whatever it is, that's what we need to do. That's the campaign we need to do. Now, I understand that it is several legislators that do not necessarily are holding it, are not necessarily in the arena in the sense of transportation, but we also then have to start the pressure in their constituency and be able to say, we need this. And this is what's going to make this state viable. That's how we attract economic development. And that's how we attract quality jobs to this state. So that's going to be my last message to everybody here as I come off as chair. So thank you. Anybody else?
There is a comment from Mayor Rui Pereira. Scottsdale will be needing to find new workers who can drive cars. The resorts may need to start their own shuttles to get employees.
All right.
Yeah, let's.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments? Thank you. Next item.
Oh, I get to follow that?
Yes, item number 6, Audit and Finance Subcommittee, real short. Good job.
Okay. Real brief, my final Audit and Finance Subcommittee, after 5 years on that group, we had a very robust discussion about the proposed fare policy changes, which we are going to see here in a little bit. We had several audits on the fare administration, the reduced fare review, which was done in memo form. Also received an update on the internal audit plan for the coming year. We did spend some time in an executive session to review the chief auditor's, Sabrina Beckstrom's performance. For the board's reference, we did recommend an outstanding overall evaluation for Sabrina. Sabrina herself has done an outstanding job as well as her team has. And with that, that concludes my comments pending questions.
Good job, Sabrina. Any questions? All right. Consent items. Item number 7. The consent agenda is presented for action. Ask the board if there are any questions or if there are any other items they need to be pulled. Any items? All right, I need a motion.
I move to accept the consent agenda.
Councilmember White.
Second.
Councilmember White made the motion. The second came from Ali Klein. Any discussion? The one area I forget. No? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Nays? I don't hear any nays. Motion passes. Proposed fare policy changes, and item number 8.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I will go through this very quickly in consideration of the time we've spent here so far today. So this item is for information. We're looking to update the fare policy as a result of our new technology that we're working to implement by early 2024. So just the background on the project here. Here's some goals that we set forth for the project at the outset, working in coordination with City of Phoenix. Some of the key project milestones that have occurred so far and that we have planned into the future. I just want to mention that in 2024, when we launch the full system, we'll have account-based fare website so folks can manage their account on the web through the and through the app. Just a number of items here that we'll be introducing. Want to highlight fare capping as a sort of a replacement of the current pass structure, and that's what's really driving the need for the fare policy update. So just some background on the fare policy outreach and public participation plan. As I mentioned, the fare policy changes will be necessary as a result of the phase 2 launch with the reloadable smart card. We'll introduce fare capping. We'll have a reduced fare account requirement. That's another reason for the policy change. The policy today does not require reduced fare IDs for folks using reduced fares. And that's one of the new items for the new system. The folks using multi-ride reduced fares will be required to have a reduced fare account or a reduced fare ID. And so just to touch on capping briefly here, basically how it works is you load value to your account. You pay the single ride fare as you tap and board with each trip. And then you cap out, for example, here is a monthly cap at $64. And basically after that 30-second ride, you ride free on the system for that month. And here are the proposed fare caps that we will be coming back for approval in the new structure in the fall timeline. Basically the same as the past prices are today, just doing it in a different fashion through capping as opposed to paying for a pass up front. So this provides a convenience to the riders, for example, with the monthly pass, that they don't have to pay $64 up front to acquire a pass. They basically load value to their account throughout the month to the point where they've loaded at least $64. And then as they ride and use the system, after they reach that $64 price point, then they ride free for the rest of the month. And then the reduced fare account, again, will be requiring all users who use reduced fares on multi-rides. So single ride fares will be the only reduced fare opportunity for folks to ride without an ID or a mobile account that is reduced fare certified. So then they will use the capping and take advantage of those discounts that are similar to today's passes. That registration as reduced fare eligible will be required, and we'll be going out in the fall later in this calendar year to get those accounts set up or IDs issued to folks who are truly eligible for reduced fare through an application process. Here's just a visual of the new cards. Hillary's team, through some focus groups, established the copper branding as well as the look of the card, and we're refreshing the current Platinum Pass to be consistent with our new copper card. Just want to highlight the fare policy public outreach and participation efforts that will be undertaken in August through September. Hillary's team will be leading this effort to get out there, educate folks, get some feedback, and then move forward with, as the project progresses, with updating the fare policy. So just where we're at in next steps. So as I mentioned, August to September will be the outreach period. September we'll hit the various staff working groups here at Valley Metro, and then we'll be coming through the October board cycle for approval of the fare policy update to be effective when phase 2 is launched. So it won't be effective immediately. We just want to have the approval in place ahead of the phase 2 launch. So when we do launch it, the policy is in effect at that time. So that's my presentation. This is for information only. Happy to entertain any questions.
Any questions? Doesn't seem like it. Thank you. Appreciate it. Item number 9, travel expenditures and solicitation. Anybody want to hear anything? Doesn't seem like it. Report on current events and suggested future items. Anybody?
Yeah, yes, I'd like to get it on the actual request for, at least to start with a study session on next steps as far as the marketing campaign that Chair Pastor spoke to. And what, what types of actions the board would think would be, whether we start, putting signs inside the buses saying this route is in jeopardy, those kinds of things. I think we start with a study session on, how we want to move forward with that, but I'd like to get it agendized. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Adams?
I support that.
Sorry, you don't look this way.
That's okay.
Councilmember Klein.
Possibly on a future agenda item, if we could look at the opportunity for an update on where we are on concerns and issues from the bus rides and where we are in dealing with customer service response and issues. I think that would be great. Perhaps down the road after you've had a chance to put it all together and bring in some information so we could see what kinds of issues are coming about, if they're one-offs or if we're having a consistent issue with Route X having something Y, so we could see the issues that could be more impactful than less impactful. Thank you.
Councilmember O.D. Harris.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that we talked about signage. I would like to know what type of signage as it pertains to safety do we communicate in terms of riding on board and things like that. So I would like to get, if they can, maybe just, getting it on the, just all the different signage that they have that Valley Metro communicates with about ridership or whatever that looks like. I know I have never seen that before, so I'm sure it is there, but I would like to just see signage from rail and bus to see how you communicate and what you're communicating on a regular basis to the passengers. So we just kind of have a picture of that on a page. That'd be great.
Max one.
Max.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I'm interested to find out if our contractors have received any regulatory complaints. If we can find out any regulatory complaints that may have come through the contractors to ensure that gets executive review in Valley Metro. I don't know if we need a study session for that or how that can be filtered out.
May I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Madam Chair, Councilmember White, can you elaborate on what you mean by regulatory complaints?
ADA.
Yeah, so because we intake the contacts, we have all of those records. And we do categorize any complaints related to federal regulations, including, for example, ADA and Title VI. So we do have all of those records and we're required to report that to the Federal Transit Administration.
So would you like a study set? I mean, would you like it on the agenda or would you like more information?
More information to view that reporting.
Got it.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Are you also talking about like they subcontract with the office, the companies that they subcontract with? You want to know what their background, so it may not necessarily be Valley Rail, but it may be a different company that complain about their performance and stuff like that. I think that's what she's talking about.
Yeah, and we intake, Valley Metro intakes all of that, regardless of whether it's a contractor or even if it's City of Phoenix or their contractors. We provide the regional customer service contact center. And so we detect those complaints first before they ever go
I
to.
think what she's saying is that, like, let's say that the security team that we hire, they're subcontracted in. We want to know if outside of what they do at Valley Metro,
Are they getting
Are they getting
Are they
complaints?
getting regulatory
Are they
complaints?
getting
Thank
regular?
you. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That I'll have to look up.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for clarity. Got it. All right. I think it's item number 11, next meeting. The next meeting of the joint boards is scheduled for Thursday, August 17th, 2023 at 11:15 with Stip. And he will make sure that we get out of here at 2:00 because I'm going to start. I didn't meet my goal, but now I'm going. All right. We have 1 minute and then we're going into our next meeting. Here we go.
You've got one break.
Yeah, that's it. All right, welcome members to the June meeting. This is RPTA. Thursday, June 22nd, 2023. Item number 1, consent agenda.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Right. Carries, motion carries. Item number 2, Valley Metro RPTA fiscal year 2024 proposed operating and capital budget. Jessica.
Madam Chair, members of the board, the budget has not changed since our last presentation. Ken Kessler, Chief Financial Officer, is available to provide a presentation and/or answer any questions you may have about the draft FY 2024 RPTA capital and operating budget.
Any questions? Looks like none. Here we go. Item number 3.
Wait.
Oh, sorry.
Motion.
I thought it was information only. Okay, here we go.
I want, actually, I want to have
Oh.
a discussion, just a little one.
Go, Vice Mayor.
I'm just concerned about the 19% increase in fixed route bus operating costs. And I'm just, because our growth is only 5.4%. So I am concerned about the money. Those that know me, it's not a surprise, but I'm just wondering, like, what we're going to do about this situation, because it's not going in a good direction.
Okay, Madam Chair, Vice Mayor Adams, good question. Really what the biggest driver of that 19% increase in fixed route is really the full annual effect of some of the actions the board took this year to address those labor issues by increasing rates in those contracts. So this is really kind of a one-time big increase because of that. So we'll see, more of a smoothing out of that going forward into future years. So I don't anticipate we'll see anything like that in the following year.
Thank you for the clarification. I really appreciate it.
Certainly.
It's operators. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? There's no nays. Motion carries. Item number 3, Valley Metro RPTA bus advertising policy discussion. I actually don't need a presentation on this. We have talked about this several times, and it was more of a,
Mix those all up.
oh gosh, it was more of a kind of guideline as to what options we would have. There are 1, 2, and 3 options. I was looking towards wanting to discuss the 3rd option because that's the one that's going to make us the most money. And if anybody wants to have any history on this, please ask your new chair, Bill, Councilmember Stipp, because he will be bringing this back in August for a vote. Go ahead.
All right. Since this has been thrust upon me, apparently.
Greatness is thrust upon you, Bill.
One of the things, what we had asked for was a look at the policy discussion. So this information has been provided to us. I realize we're short of time. Please review the information. If you have a question about the history from the board perspective and how we ended up getting here, I'm happy to take those calls. The intent would be to bring back a discussion on changing the board's, RPTA board's policy. And I think that's kind of where we were going. And based on my request last month to where we got today, I think there was some confusion. I think that's why it's being punted. So essentially, we're tabling this item until August, I think, from a formal perspective, rather than blowing it off.
The item is agendized today for information only. So we would be happy to bring this back to the
Well,
board. And I want to clarify, would you like this brought back to the board in August for action, Councilmember? Okay, thank you.
I think there's enough new members of the board that need to understand the actual advertising policy and then what changes are perhaps being considered. The current chair, council member, the Honorable Laura Pastor has suggested that we look at option number 3. But I think this board, we need to have a little bit more robust discussion about that. Just so everyone's comfortable with that. Her and I were part of that original discussion, and I think Councilmember Tommelchoff, everybody else that is sitting here at this table, and I think everybody else who's online, with the exception perhaps of Mayor Laval, did not participate in that discussion. So I think we need to do a little bit of both, kind of going forward. This was a great set of information, and if you're interested in the advertising, please read it. I know that we got a lot of information, but if you're interested in this advertising issue and why it's such an important part of this discussion, please read the material. And then, so if we can do both, we're going to do a policy update and then perhaps a little bit of info. If we cannot do it for the August meeting because of timing, then September I think is fine, but I don't think we should go any later than September on a policy change, given advertising opportunities coming up, and in September may be too late. So I think we may have to look at what outfronts revenue potentials are for August. I don't.
We can look into our August meeting.
And I would recommend that discussion and possible action.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
So that way there's, once the discussion is had and information and questions are answered, then there's a possible action.
Then we can take action.
You can take action in August because I think if we need to generate more money. And this is one way of generating more money. So that would be my suggestion.
I concur.
All right. So this item has been continued to August. Item number 4, fiscal year 2024 election of Valley Metro Board officers and subcommittee position. The slate of board officers and subcommittee members are outlined in the memo that is in your board packet. Are there any questions? So I would like to request a motion and a second to approve the slate of board officers and subcommittee position as presented to serve for the fiscal year 2024.
So seconded.
Okay. There's a motion and there's a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I hear any nays? I don't hear any. Okay. Anybody that wants to speak?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to be very brief, obviously, but I want to take the time to thank everybody for showing confidence in selecting me as the next RPTA chair. I have long said that given Goodyear's limited public transit presence, that we probably have no business being the chair of RPTA. However, I became very passionate about public transportation because I saw how truly important our services were to the people that relied on us very much during the pandemic. We are an essential part of many people's lives, and the effective and efficient operation of this system is all of our responsibilities. The mission of Valley Metro, it's up on the wall, is to connect communities and enhance lives, and I don't think we can ever really lose sight of that. During the summer break, sometime in July or August, or perhaps early fall, each one of us will be contacted by consultants working on our strategic plan. I really want to strongly encourage each one of the board members and the member city staffs to participate in whatever activity they want to bring forward, whatever interviews they have. And remember that we are not an organization of 19 individual transit systems, but that we are the regional public transportation authority responsible for enhancing the lives of more than 23 million fare riders in, as Jessica pointed out, the fastest growing county in the country. While we have an uncertain future ahead with Prop 400, it will take a coordinated effort on all of our behalves, and I think that's been shown here this afternoon. And obviously, I need to thank our former, or our soon-to-be former board chair, Laura Pastor, but particularly the staff from the city of Goodyear, Christine McMurdy and Jenna Carrico, for their support of me and everything else that we do. And I will say this, the last 6 years on my tenure here on the board have not been the smoothest for this organization, but the Valley Metro staff has shown great patience and commitment to serving the region. And I particularly want to thank you as well. And I hope that I can live up to your expectations as the chair. That's all I got. Thanks. As I'm being musiced out by OD.
Vice Mayor Adams.
You know how my ring gonna be.
I just want to thank Councilmember Pastor for her wonderful leadership
Thank you.
and for being just a stand-up person. And I wish you the best of luck in your future. And I will be supporting you for Congress, of the United States of America. Thank you.
Okay, I would thank you for everybody's, thank you for everybody stepping up in leadership role and to take the reins. I really appreciate it. Just like to say I've had a great time as chair. I entered here a year and a half ago and was on a wild ride, and it's now not nice and smooth and steady right now. So let's keep it that way. Except for today, I decided to make it the longest meeting. And we still have and we still have one more meeting. So item number 5, report on current events, suggested future agenda items. Anybody? All right, we have enough. Item number 6, the next meeting is Thursday, August 17th, 2023 at 11:15 with Chair Stipp. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Can we have 1 minute now?
That's where I love it.
I hate the other one.
I know. Bye. I'm sorry, just ladies. Okay, go. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I didn't see you.
I'm like.
We'll see you in Congress.
I was like.
I was like, come on now. I loved him.
Wait.
Campaign. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Board members, are there any questions or are there any items that need to be pulled for separate discussion?
No.
Request a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda items 1A through 1C.
So move.
Second.
There's no discussion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Number 2, Valley Metro. Jessica, are there any, would you like to introduce this item?
Yep, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Valley Metro Rail Board. I would like to present this item. This is the draft Valley Metro Rail 2024 operating and capital budget. This has not changed since our last presentation. Ken Kessler, Chief Financial Officer, again is available to answer any questions or provide a presentation if the board pleases.
Would anyone like a presentation today?
No.
Okay, I need to request a motion then a second to approve the Valley Metro Rail proposed operating and capital budget and acceptance of the 5-year operating forecast and capital program.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 3, we have the fiscal year 2024 election of Valley Metro Board officers and subcommittee positions. Do I have any questions? Does anyone have any questions about this item? If not, could I have a motion, a second to approve?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. 4, report on current events and suggested future items. Are there anybody that wants to report on current events, or are there any agenda items for future meetings?
No.
Okay, I'm not hearing anyone out there, so we will go ahead and move to item 5, the next meeting. The next meeting will be on Thursday, August 17th, 2023 at 11:15 a.m. Meeting is adjourned.